Hello dear viewers, thank you for choosing the Manhwa compilation channel. Please leave feedback in the comments after watching. Enjoy watching. The story begins with a rather unkempt looking boy running out of breath towards the police camp. He was apparently urgently looking for someone, because he was constantly thinking about the fact that he needed to go, and that he had to get there today. Not seeing a stone lying in the middle of the road, he caught his foot on it and rolled further along the path. Remembering his mother, the boy could not just stop here. Wiping away his tears, he gave himself a mental command to move forward. The boy continued to run with all his might. He continued to walk towards the goal to get to the camp. He had a strong thirst, and his legs were cramped from pain. Again remembering his mother, he asked what he should do and what to do. Having fallen from powerlessness to the ground, he continued to crawl. He must not give up here. Almost there, he began to lose the last bits of consciousness. Almost crawling towards the final goal, he only thought that this was the only way to tell his elders about the injustice they faced. The guards, noticing him, ran up to the boy. The guards took him by the hands, carrying him to the entrance to the main chamber. The boy, seeing that he was already very close, shouted that he needed to see the elder. He was brought to the tent in which that same elder was staying. Already seeing that he was almost there, the boy shouted that this was unfair. With tears in his eyes, he turned to the elder for help. The boy tried to get through to him, saying that his sister was killed, and he wants justice. In a gazebo surrounded by a lake with lotuses, a young man, apparently from a wealthy family, was sitting next to his father, with his head bowed. He apologized to his father for making a mistake with the girl, making the excuse that he didn't know. His father did not care about the poor girl, nor did he care about what his son did to her. His only concern was that it was shameful for a young guy to sit with his head down like that in such a situation. The people sitting nearby agreed, saying it was all nothing, and then returned to talking and drinking alcohol. Suddenly someone shouted, "Hey, you freaks!" Thereby drawing all the attention to themselves, they turned around to see who was so brave there. This was shouted by the same kid who asked the police for help. Addressing them, he still loudly shouted, "Give back my sister's life!" It seems they were so relaxed that they did not notice how a child entered the territory, who they thought had been dead for a long time. One of the manager's subordinates said that he would sort everything out, thereby getting rid of the kid. The old man stopped him because he saw that the boy had not arrived alone. The elder slowly approached from behind and stood next to the child, putting his hand on his shoulder. Everyone looked at the new arrivals tensely, not daring to do anything about the guy from whom powerful energy emanated. The old man stood up, which prompted others to also stand up. He introduced himself as Manhwa, as well as the leader of the 10,000 Fists clan. The elder asked if it was him when the boy turned his head in search of the culprit. Turning his head, the boy pointed to the son of the clan leader. The young man was clearly nervous. He tensely did not take his eyes off the arrivals. Manhwa asked the elder who he was and what he was doing here. The eldest was from the Lee Dynasty Criminal Police Department, and a case came into his hands, so he began an investigation. The manager became nervous, wondering whether he was a boss or a detective, chuckling internally that he thought he would be a more important bird. He tried to close the conflict, saying that there was nothing serious there, so don't pay attention and go through the forest, saying that he had already reported everything to the head of the district. Thinking that the investigator was lower in status than him, he began to address him on a first-name basis. The elder also switched to you, irritating him with this. The manager says that there's no need to make a fuss over nonsense, urging him to drink a glass and leave. Since he is the eldest of the criminal police, he will decide whether it is nonsense or not, saying that his son will have to go with him. Manhwa became furious, saying that the head of the district already knows about everything, reminding him of the rule that the crown and Muram are indestructible, and he dares to interfere. It seems that the elder one likes how the situation is developing. Others looking at him thought that he was crazy. "Aren't you glad?" asked the older boy, to which he looked at him in bewilderment. These types are now ignoring state law, which is very beneficial to the investigator. Looking at the boy, he says that they can do the same. They ignore the state law, of course we can do the same. It seems that the detective was going to accept Manhwa's words as an obstacle to the performance of his official business. The head of the clan was going to turn a blind eye to everything, since he is a member of the police. But in his opinion, he turned out to be even more of a psycho. Taking him for just a detective, he mocked him, saying that someone like him had no right to share a conversation with him in ordinary times. The elder agreed, teasing that in ordinary times he would not even have encountered such a rabble as he did. Manhwa's subordinates immediately took out their weapons and took a fighting stance, surrounding them. With a slight movement, he filled his hand with energy, standing in a stance, ready to attack. As if mocking them, he said that it was not too late to kneel before him. One of the subordinates drew his swords, saying that he had gone crazy. Having attacked the detective, he shouted, "Die!" But the elder easily dodged his blows. The investigator now filled his entire body with energy, ready to fight. The subordinate in blue rushed at him, thinking of finishing him off completely. The elder just grinned at him, waving his hand, as if driving away some kind of insect. He lifted it into the air with his spiritual magic as if it were worthless. While everyone was looking intently at their brother, he was flying and wondering what and how. Ultimately, the elder pulled him sharply to the concrete pillar, which clearly hit him hard on his back. The leader jumped up when he saw this act. He could not believe his eyes. It was as if all the energy had been sucked out of his subordinate. It looked as if he was being electrocuted. Then Panmora jumped up to stop it, but he was thrown back by the shockwave. The subordinate fell immediately after him and could not get up, and it's unlikely that he can. Plus, his hand was burned quite well. Without a drop of regret, the elder walked over the body lying on the ground, heading towards the Mora family. The investigator grinned. The leader, enraged even more, ordered to attack him with the entire crowd. Everyone immediately rushed into battle, like little dogs on the orders of the owner. The elder only smiled again, filling the open room with his key energy. No one really understood anything. For several seconds, everyone was at a loss. Then suddenly, everyone was thrown out of the gazebo. Some fell where, some went straight into the water, some flew further. By doing this, he thereby scared the leader until his teeth creaked. He asked if he would now hand over his son. Looking at the elder with fear, he wanted to ask where a person like him came from. The investigator did not allow him to ask anything, having said only that he gave him the right to choose. Hand over your son or fight on. Trembling with fear, he turned to his father. Thinking that the elder is just joking, he says that his jokes have gone very far. The investigator did not seem to like this, as he ordered to choose one of the two. Gritting his teeth, he takes the sword out of its sheath, thereby interesting the elder. The elder, saying that how such a caring father can point a sword at innocent people, finishing that he can calmly joke on them. The leader took a fighting stance, knowing that he could not defeat him. He decided what to do. Outside, the noise of people approaching was heard, which obviously made Panmora happy. Seeing that the head of the district had arrived, he was even more happy. They started vying with each other to tell them that some detective had burst into their place and tripled the booth. The head recognized the elder, introduced himself as Yu Pyun, and greeted him. He asked for forgiveness, saying that if the elder had sent one person, he would have met him. The elder looked at the leader, saying that he could lower the weapon, although it would have been better if he had twirled his sword once. He sat down next to the boy, saying that he was sorry that he did not see the grandiose spectacle. The child asked what would happen to those people. He was worried that they might not be sent to prison, because they knew influential people. The investigator told him not to worry. After all, murder is punishable by death by death. The heads of criminals will definitely fly off their shoulders on the guillotine. This made the father and son fall into holy horror. Looking at this child, the elder now understood what kind of place the head ruled the district. Yu Pyun apologized, saying that he would investigate so that everything would be fair. The elder said that this time he would believe him, saying that even though he constantly received backlash from the weak, there are still cases when they give him gratitude. The senior subordinate, appearing out of nowhere, said that he had received urgent news from his home. Having delivered the message, he quietly awaited the next instruction. While carefully reading the scroll, the elder became alarmed when he saw something that he did not quite like. He gave his subordinate an order to find everyone connected with the case and bring every single one of them to the law, saying that he will check everything carefully again later. Putting his hand on the boy's head, he bids him farewell, telling him not to worry and that he will sort everything out himself. The boy, with tears in his eyes, fell to his knees and bow and began to thank him. Hearing only the sound of a jump, he raised his head up. Seeing the elder leaving, he shouted that he would definitely repay his mercy. Kang Jin, that was the name of the eldest, appeared at the gates of his home. Instantly overcoming the obstacle in the form of a yard, he headed straight into the house, entering the teacher's chambers without knocking, which is otherwise the same as always. He quickly approached the bed on which his sick teacher was lying, asking how he was. It seems that he was very worried that his student did not perceive the world quite correctly, showing his teeth to everyone, giving guidance, telling him to be careful and beware of those who have swords. He needs to be able to distinguish between these types. Kang Jin himself was concerned about the teacher's condition, telling him not to talk too much. The teacher continued to speak without listening to him. It is likely that someone who lacks money is a good person, and a swordsman who doesn't care about money at all has a high probability of being bad, telling him to think. Had he ever seen mighty men starve to death? Or so that strong people cannot do what they want? The logic of this world paves an unhindered path for the powerful. But even strong warriors who lack money live fairly. And those who are not strong at all, but are greedy for money, only steal property from those who are weaker than themselves. The teacher asked him if he was wrong. Kang Jin of course agreed with him, but asked him to remain calm. He asked if he was an excellent teacher. He told him how one can easily understand the human mind. He agreed with the teacher, asking him not to leave him, telling him that he should live a long, long life and see him get married. His teacher could not understand whether he was serious, but Kang Jin himself asked if he was okay. It seems that he thought that his teacher would go into another world, to which the teacher reacted very violently, saying that he was at the full dawn of his strength, and the student was already going to order a coffin for him. Swearing, he said that he gave such a 100-meter mark when he learned that his teacher was lying in a sick bed. The teacher told him to filter the market, asking where it came from in his vocabulary. Kang Jin was shocked when the old man, who had never done anything like this, suddenly, out of the blue, made a serious face and began to weave with his tongue that he was worried, asking if he had heard the saying that, if a person changes, then it's time for him to die, asking what was wrong with his hands and why they were shaking. It seems the old man is dissatisfied, saying that he worked until his bones were broken, trying to raise him, and instead of a luxurious life, he rushes to order a ticket to the next world. Kang Jin asked again what happened to his hands. It seems that it was all due to the fact that he did not sleep for several nights, and apparently from the fact that he was squeezing the domino bones so tightly, he began to tremble. Plus, he lay around too much. So it turned out that his student mistook him for half dead. First cards, and now dominoes. He does everything he can. Kang Jin claims that he did not plow until his bones were broken. He grew on his own. It seems the old man thought that he would not know that he receives money from his father every month. He heard that this old man was charging as much as 4 liang a month. I wonder if he knows that one family can live on this amount for several months. Here the old man immediately changed his manner of communication, calling him his beloved student. Kang Jin wonders if he should tell his father directly that he is a simple charlatan. According to the teacher, he's a very bad person, because he is not strong, but he has plenty of money. The old man had already completely changed his manner of communication, saying that he had done something wrong. He said that there is enough money, that he can do this during the day, and not at night, because he needs to take care of his health at his age. The old man seemed to understand, nodding his head apologetically. Kang Jin had to leave on business, saying that he would return in a few days, agreeing that he would not do anything stupid during this time. The teacher nodded and finally told him to be careful, telling him not to go outside, but to rest inside, and if something happens, then let him report to the chief official. Walking down the street, he suddenly felt that his legs were shaking without understanding the reason, immediately remembering all the promises made to the teacher. It's true that if they break the promise they made to each other, it will be sad, and it's sad that this can happen. Going further, he thought that the teacher needed to be careful at his age. The teacher should not leave him yet. Looking at his retreating back, the old man thought that Kang Jin is becoming more and more fierce. He is holding up well. But this is not enough. He must still be close to him. At least the old man wants to see him get married and see his child born. Kang Jin is still a shot, which means his child will turn out to be the same. Exactly the same as he himself was in childhood. Let's go back to the time when the old man was younger. Apparently tired and rejuvenated, the teacher crawled out of the bushes. It looks like he took a wrong turn, and is now wandering around there, asking himself why the road down is so terrible. Suddenly slipping, he falls, hitting something, losing consciousness. Having woken up and with difficulty raised his head, he tried to look around. Feeling a wave of pain run through his entire body, he could not get up. Yes, old age is not a joy, but he just rolled down the mountain after thinking. He put his head back on the ground. Now he will have to lie motionless for several hours and hope that there are no predators here. Hearing some sound, he carefully turned his head to the side. Through the bushes, he saw a rabbit who was trying to get away from someone, but did not have time. Internally hoping that this is not a tiger, since in this state, he is unlikely to cope with it. The rabbit was apparently living out the last seconds of its already short life, when suddenly a snow-white hand appeared, stroking the animal. By the hand, one could understand that it was a child. A boy with amazing red eyes and blue hair sat down with a knife behind the rabbit, placing his free hand on the body of the animal. Without a drop of regret, he sharply raised the knife to the body of the rabbit. Hit right in the head, the rabbit breathed its last. It seems that the boy was dissatisfied with something and even annoyed. Looking at him from behind the bushes, he thought that the boy was a real psycho. Noticing that there was someone in the bushes, he went to check. Approaching the bushes, he looked in, finally seeing a man lying there. Externally laughing, but internally grimacing from pain in the lower back, he looked at the boy. Feeling that he couldn't get up, he made such a grimace. Thank you. At least internally. He asked the boy what he was doing here, in the middle of the forest. The boy answered the question with a question, asking the old man what he was doing here. Looking at the boy, he replied that he would lie down for a while. Noticing that the old man was holding his waist, he asked the following. With a knife in his hands? He asked, apparently thinking that the old man was hiding a weapon behind his back. Not understanding what he is talking about, asking what knife he is talking about. The old man's back just hurts a lot. The boy looks at him with suspicion and asks who he is. Answering that he was simply a collector of medicinal mountain herbs, the boy looked at him again, and still suspiciously asked him why he didn't have Manjunga with him. The old man replies to this that he most likely lost it because he already came back down the mountain once. Apparently the boy didn't believe him one bit. It seems the old man did not understand what he meant. He came even closer to the old man, almost resting his feet on the old man. It turns out that this is his family's mountain. His family owns this forest, so he thoroughly knows all the people who come here to collect herbs. Not understanding what he was hinting at, the old man looked at the boy in bewilderment. The boy says that in fact he is not a herbalist. Concluding that he was just a person running away from someone else, the boy held a knife behind his back. The old man began to deny everything. Little Kangjin says that when he is a resident of these places, he should know that the mountains belong to my family. It is immediately clear from him that he is a stranger. So if he is not from the outer lands, then why is he not dressed like a herbalist? He asked the old man. He replies that he accidentally wandered into the wrong place. The boy notices that just a minute ago, he said something completely different. The old man did not find what to answer, so he simply remained silent. He says that there are rumors about a certain gang of bandits that formed just recently, about a month ago, so his family decided to send imperial military forces for 7 days. Immediately directly asking if he is one of them, to which the old man immediately says no, that he doesn't think twice about her, concluding that he is quite an ordinary person who does not evade the law and lives an ordinary life. Kang Jin says that the essence of the matter is not even close to this, to which the lying person looking at him in bewilderment asks what then. Kang Jin only cares about 2 things. The first is that he is a fugitive hiding from others in the mountains. The old man rose slightly to his elbows and warily asked about the second one. Still standing with the knife behind his back, he leans slightly towards him. Looking menacingly, he asks what the purpose of his visit is. The elder tried to think about what to do. Crawling to the tree trunk, he carefully rose to his feet, doubting something. When the boy noticed that he was rising, intensely watching his every movement, standing up fully, leaning his hand on a tree, he saw that the boy was hesitating. After all, he was still a child. He needs to start moving if he doesn't want trouble to overtake him sooner. The boy thought that he was like a mountain bandit, putting his hands with a knife in front of him, ready to defend or attack, depending on the development of the situation. Kang Jin rushed at him first because he knew that he was physically inferior to him. Seeing that he rushed at him first, he knocked out the knife from him, hitting his hands. Taking the boy by the collar, he felt a sharp pain in his back. Yes, old age is not a joy. Holding the collar with one hand and the arm with the other, he spun it in the air. Waking up from this mind-blowing carousel, on the ground, when the old man twisted him with his arms and legs so that he could move, telling him that he was completely crazy. He told the little guy that if he sees someone who is feeling bad, shouldn't he try to help him? Why rush with a knife? The boy replied that safety comes first. Kang Jin doubted, because he understood that he could not defeat the old man, shouting that he was offering him to simply die at the hands of the mountain bandit. The elder in this skirmish says that he is not a bandit, and never has been, and never will be. The boy asked why he tried to kill him then, to which he replied that he was acting suspiciously, and he could no longer just lie there and look at him. The boy began to struggle, saying that even if he was not a bandit, he still saw everything. When the elder asked what he was talking about, the boy spoke about the recently killed rabbit, and that he most likely already considered him crazy. He talks about the moment when the old man saw him trying to dine on them. He really is a crazy guy. The boy says he didn't remove the skin to make fun of him. Well, this is logical. If he was going to eat it, he wouldn't eat it along with the skin. He seemed surprised that the old man thought so. The old man asked him with a chuckle if he thought that he wanted to steal the rabbit from him. Now Kang Jin doesn't understand him, but the old man had no idea of stealing him. He said to let him in, but the second one told him to apologize to him. The boy roughly apologized, but the grandfather was surprised at how quickly his character changed, and asked if he wanted to tell him something. In his opinion, he still won't understand anything even if he tells. He wants the old man to tell fortunes himself, apparently not, since he began his story. He so wants to be with others, but they seem to deliberately move away from him. Therefore, he often plays alone, but he wants to communicate with others too. It's barely visible, but the boy shuddered when he said that he still didn't understand. He says that maybe there is something wrong with those people, or something is wrong with him. Everyone around him calls him a monster, and now this old man calls him crazy. He felt damned offended. Rising sharply from the ground, putting his hands on the boy's shoulders, he said that they were absolutely wrong. Getting down on one knee, he looked at the boy, trying to convince him that he was no monster or crazy. Telling him that he was the most special child in the world, he looked at him with hope, and if he thinks that after his thoughts the old man will become afraid of him, then he is deeply mistaken. Changing the conversation in a different direction, he offered to fry a rabbit, mentioning that he was very hungry. Entering the gate on which there was a sign, Banker Lee, The old man saw a huge courtyard, and immediately after it a huge, beautiful estate. Not at all embarrassed by his words, he said that they really had a mansion, to which Kang Jin replied that it was not such a big house, but there were a lot of valuable things inside. Absolutely shamelessly, he asked him that since he lived so richly, would he let his teacher spend the night, to which the boy asked him since when he had been his teacher. After which the old man said that they had just recently discussed his training. Kang Jin remembered this, which is why he brought him to his house, a walking nuisance. He turned around and looked at him, saying that his father might be against this whole idea. To which the old man said that every parent wants the best for their child. Kang Jin himself was not so confident in his father, saying that he would hardly commit any crime, for example. He was not allowed to finish his sentence by his father, who appeared at the very time they were talking about him. His father asked where he was and who the man next to him was. Seeing that it was Kang Jin's father who came, he hurried to introduce himself, calling himself Guan Nora. Lee Ji-won also introduced himself in response, asking who he was. The old man says that he and Kang Jin met by chance today, and he would like to stay for a while and train him. Having said this, he put his hand on the boy's shoulder. Kang Jin's father looked at the old man and his clothes with doubt. He asked to tell him a little more about himself, thinking that the master would hardly wear such a robe, but since his child recognized him, he praised Lee Ji-won's insight, but telling him not to call him a child. He is a warrior. In response, Kang Jin's father said that he did not think that the training itself would take much time. Guan Nora joined the army when he was 16, and things went pretty well. After spending more than 10 years there, he still had the confidence to go out and make a living at it, so he decided to continue honing his skills. But after another dozen years, he was no longer useful, so they asked him to leave them. This means that he wants to stay here with Kang Jin and train him. Kang Jin is not quite simple as he seems at first glance. And I'm sure you also noticed that he is a man with a core, he said, turning to the boy's father. While in the army, Guan Nora met a huge number of different people along the way, and some of them were very similar to him. Lee Ji-won asked if he could handle it, to which he confidently replied that yes, saying that he had nothing really to do, but at least he would be of some use. A well-furnished house, this is where Guan Nora, who is also now Kang Jin's mentor, will live. They stood on the threshold of the house looking at the yard, talking. It turns out that these were not empty words, said Kang Jin, addressing the old man. Nora asked what he was talking about, to which the boy said that he was talking about what he would teach him. Lee Ji-won is a rich man, and this can be seen with the naked eye. He did not think that he would be given such a house. Jin's father is very good at understanding people, and does not waste money. Despite this, he provided him with housing and even assigned a servant. This suggests that there really is something in his teacher. Well, of course, he said that he would help him without taking a penny in return. It is clear that Kang Jin only half believed him, most likely because of his clothes. Anyone looking at him will say that he does not look like a person who would teach someone. It seems he wants to start with his manners, saying that if he expresses himself in such an uncivilized manner, then he will not make friends with people. The boy himself did not consider it wrong, because he told the truth. Stroking him on the head, he asked what was so important about appearance. A person always has a tendency to judge others by their cover. Kang Jin has his own opinion on this, saying that if you don't know what kind of person is inside, you can only rely on appearance otherwise. Pulling his cheek, the boy turned his attention to his mentor. Sighing, he said that even if this is really so, then one cannot say such things openly. Speech should always be beautiful. Kang Jin seems a little annoyed, asking what he's going to teach him. It is unlikely that he has read more books than himself. The mentor laughed when he heard what his newfound student said. It doesn't look like he's going to teach him from books, although he himself said that he'll teach him how to live in society. He thought that they would tell him stories about famous adults, and the old man would not even mention them. He crouched down in front of the boy, saying that, as he said, where his outfit suggests that he will teach him such things. In life, it was enough for him to know only his name. The boy asked what the training would consist of. The man, after thinking a little, said, he must teach him everything he knows, even if he doesn't look like he has 5 grades. But he has accumulated a decent amount of knowledge about the world, all of which may take several years. Smirking, Kang Jin said that it turns out that the teacher can live for nothing for several years. Feignedly angry, he asked if he really looked like such a person. Ignoring the hand, he said that he looked exactly like him. He put his hand on his head, saying that, let's see what I teach you. The old man asked in all seriousness where he could eat here. The house is from the back, after which there was a clearing. A teacher and a student stood on it. Kang Jin was holding something small in his hands. Seeing that it is a chicken, he asks why he needs it, not understanding his question. The mentor says that it is a chicken, and to be more gentle with it, otherwise the chicken will screw up. He says that he understood who it is, asking why he needs it. What do you think? Asked the old man. Kam Jin thinks that he is inviting him to dispose of it as he wishes. The chicken sitting between his fingers closed his eyes, trembling. The teacher shouted something about how he would drive him into the grave with just his glance. Not knowing what to do with it, he looked at the mentor, who in turn said to strain his brain, asking him to think about why he gave him the chicken. Lost in thought, he stared at the still very small chicken, not understanding what to do with it. He is not familiar with the concept of raising a chicken. He still does not understand why he gave him the chicken. If it were a little bigger, it would be good for food. But I think the bird in my hands is not meant to become a snack, Kang Jin said calmly, adding that besides, it doesn't seem to him that the teacher wants for the little one to play with the bird. To be at the same eye level with him, Guan Nora sat down on one knee, asking him what the chick would be when he grew up. Chicken, of course, the young man answered. He asked him what about raising a chicken. He did not think about this scenario. Upset that he was again different from the others, the mentor said that this is precisely the reason why he is special. There is no problem with him. It's just that if he doesn't think like that, you'll be alone for the rest of your life. Taking the student's hand, he asked if his hand was warm. Kang Jin did not hesitate to say, cold. Having said that if you wait, they will become warmer. He will understand if he thinks about it once. Is all this necessary? Asked Kang Jin. The old man says he doesn't know for sure, but the man said yes. The boy asked who that man was. There is one shot that just told him that being special is not strange. The boy asked if they were similar, to which he replied that not at all. Compared to him, you are very ordinary. This is why he is so confident that he can easily get along with other people. Kang Jin thought that he, like that person, could not fit into society, but his teacher denied this, saying that he, on the contrary, got along with people. He was a very smart person. What he means is that if a truly unusual guy like him was able to live, then you can too. The boy asked whether it was necessary to raise a chicken for this purpose, but the mentor replied that yes, until the chicken becomes a chicken and begins to lay eggs. He must take good care of it. Agreeing, he said that it would not be difficult, to which the teacher said that if he is entrusted with someone's life, even a chicken, taking responsibility for it is far from an easy matter. This is his first teaching and task from the teacher, punishing him so that he must fulfill it. This was a mistake. Chick walked around the table without paying any attention to the food. Watching him, he asked why the chicken didn't eat anything. This was a major mistake. Looking where the chick was looking, he saw a cat on the fence, looking forward to his lunch with this bird. There was too much around that he had to worry about. Throwing a stone at the place where the cat was sitting, he drove it away. He wondered why he should do this for the sake of a bird that doesn't really eat, thinking about why he should even bother about this. Raising his head, he saw a bird soaring in the sky, which by its very existence irritated him. Turning sharply, he looked at the chick who was walking around the table, not suspecting anything. He went at him with the intention of finishing him off, but the chick, as if sensing this, began to tremble. Taking him by the collar, he pulled the boy towards him. Feeling that he was being pulled back, he turned his head to see who it was. Seeing that it was the teacher who was holding him, he stopped kicking. Probably, seeing that his student was going to kill the chicken. Despite the fact that he said to be sure to complete the task, he intervened to prevent this from happening. The bird ate quite calmly under the supervision of Guan Nora. Stroking the chicken on the head, he tells him to watch how he crushes the food, to which he tells him that some creature discriminates against people. This bird did nothing but squeak with him. The teacher asked if that was why he was going to kill her, to which the student says that everything is not so. And it seems to him that it's so. He's tired of watching her. So he decided to beat up the chicken. The boy just refused, to which the old man said that it was written all over his face how tired he is. Kang Jin irritably repeated again that no, this is only the beginning of suffering. The teacher said that if not, then you need to raise the bird well. He said that he would try somehow, and the teacher told him that he would try somehow. He's right, but he said that the chick must definitely survive. He says that he thinks that he will succeed, since special people have a strong will, to which Kang Jin says that he should stop harping on this topic for 2 years. In response, he told him that people don't like it when their interlocutor becomes furious just after a few words. The boy already understood this, saying that only his teacher would not understand. When he lifted the young man into the air, he almost screamed in surprise. Raising him in his arms, he said that all his words were for his good. Why was he angry? The boy did not understand why he did this, to which he told him that now he would always do this when he was raging. He said that he was disgusted, to which the old man replied that it was warm. I even got goosebumps, which is a significant plus. Having placed it on the ground, he said that it was very good. After all, this suggests that he is also an ordinary person. Everything will work out if you teach him gradually, step by step. With horror in his eyes, he stared at what the boy was doing. Hearing his name, Kang Jin stopped, shuddering. Remembering that the chicken had to be raised and not killed, He sharply looked at the body of the bird. Verbal control alone is not enough. Nothing will come of it with the help of will alone. Those things that make people call him a monster still don't go away. They are natural to him in the same way that eating food and going to the toilet is natural to others. Although no, these very things for him go beyond the line of naturalness. They are perceived by him as something that he must do. The old man needs to come up with something else to contain his energy. Tall mountains that are completely surrounded by forest. While the teacher was resting, sitting under a tree, his student, out of breath, ran from the mountain back to him, asking himself what he was doing. Apparently, he is very dissatisfied with the fact that he was forced to run to the top of the mountain and back, when he himself was lying in the shade drinking alcohol. The mentor, seeing that the energy was rushing out of him, said to do another circle. He asked to tell the reason for all this running around, to which he said that the guy himself had promised to unconditionally follow all his instructions. Kang Jin said that he should at least know where the logic is in all this. The old man said that he would not say anything. This was his punishment for not keeping his promise. Asking him why he is starting again. Having said to go back to the mountain, he agreed that if he returns in 4 hours, he will allow him to ask one question. Otherwise, no questions. Seeing his retreating back, he thought that first he needed to pacify his energy. And again, everything was new. He fell asleep under a tree. The boy came running from the mountain, woke him up, and began to be indignant. The old man again sent him to the top of the mountain. Having finally woken up, he wondered if Kang Jin still had the strength to resist, despite the fact that every day he goes to the mountains 2 times. Arriving at a new training session, he stared in bewilderment at his grandfather with a stick. He said that they would draw lines, not understanding. The young man asked which lines. The teacher began to draw the character Chan on the ground with a stick. He told the student to repeat after him, to which he asked him why. Remembering that he would not answer the question until he completed the task, Kang Jin took up the stick. It's crooked, but more or less something happened. When he said that he had finished, the teacher told him that it was no good, telling him to look again at how he drew and how he himself drew. Looking again, he saw the difference, understanding what to do. Drawing diligently again and again, he completely outlined the area around him. According to the boy, the handwriting was already more or less clear. Guan Nora told him to come up to him. Raising him to a low ledge, he asked if he knew what kind of hieroglyph this was, to which the student replied that yes. Having asked what it means, the student replied that it means justice, correctness, and straightforwardness. It's all right when he says that he himself is not particularly smart, being able to write only the hieroglyph Chan and 2 hieroglyphs of his name. However, the people who came up with these same hieroglyphs are far from being as ignorant as him. Before writing the character Jean, they thought about its meaning. Telling him to look, he begins to tell, the character Chan consists of the top line, the character for one, and the rest is the character for end. This means that you need to stop on your only path, look around, and reflect. If he thinks and analyzes the situation, he will eventually come to the right decision, which is why the character John is written this way. The teacher said that the character Chan is very necessary for him. If he wants to make friends with people, he should think about how they will accept your words and actions. He asked what it meant that he should adapt to others, to which the teacher replied that this was of no use if you considered your position to be correct. Because he is unusual, he should show concern for other people. That's what he meant. Care? Asked the boy. From now on, before noon he will climb the mountain, and after noon he will write that hieroglyph. With the right thoughts, the right hieroglyph. Running further to draw the Chan hieroglyph, he began to carefully draw stripe after stripe. Diligently drawing each hieroglyph, he says that his lines are not as beautiful as those of his teacher, to which he replies that his lines, a reflection of his soul, are crooked and not very good in appearance. The student shouts to him that where has he seen a person who succeeded in everything the first time? The same one says that there are such people. Having asked who it was, he was told that they were people with the right soul, to which he indignantly asked, is he crooked or something? Having said that he doesn't know this, but now he's trying to make it smoother. Without answering anything, he continued to draw. It won't be easy to draw. You have to put strength into your entire lower body, so you'll need a lot of stamina. You need to reduce your energy to such an extent that there is no strength left for wonderful thoughts. If energy is spent in this way, he will begin to think more than move, and then there will be many reasons to look back at yourself. Moreover, he will become addicted to repeated physical training, so there is no need to worry for a while. It was early morning, peace and quiet. Suddenly a rooster flew out, starting to wake him up and run around the area. The old man looked at him with drool flowing. Having landed, the cockerel noticed something and wanted to take off again. But after flying literally a meter high, he fell, crowing for the last time. One might say, everyone eats chicken. He still drools in buckets, he thought, looking at the rooster. Turning to face the room, he ran his gaze over it. When did he live in such luxury? He mentally asked himself. Kang Jin's family's mansion is so big he won't even catch your eye. However, why he feels so lousy at heart, he himself does not know. Teacher Guan, when someone addressed him, he turned his head back to the courtyard. Turning around, he saw Li Jiwan and immediately jumped up from his seat. He smiled, seeing his reaction to his arrival. They went for a walk around the territory. The old man says that he is trying his best, to which the owner replies that simply exhausting his strength will not bring full results. Walking behind him, he thought that he didn't care about what was happening during this time. It turns out that he didn't. Although the matter concerns his son, how can he not show interest? He said that there were other methods, but he thought it was too early for them. To which Kang Jin's father said that it seemed like his words caused a misunderstanding, saying that he didn't mean it that way. Parental feelings are all the same. It is clear that he is worried, but he has ideas, so he asks to wait a little longer. Li Jiwan agreed, saying that he was already immensely grateful to him for treating Kang Jin with his heart and soul. The old man is happy that he thinks so of him, saying that he will not disappoint him. Finding ourselves again in the middle of the mountains, in the forest, we see a boy running up the road. And the teacher himself, again lying down under a tree, hummed some song with alcohol in his hands. Stopping, he dug the ground with his knees, stopping completely. Exhausted, he raised his head to see what his mentor was doing. The old man is sleeping without his hind legs. Hearing the noise, he woke up, getting up and rubbing his eyes. Immediately opening lunch, he seemed to forget about the boy and began to eat. Only when he heard his voice, he realized that he had already returned and invited him to join the meal. Kang Jin looked with disgust at the food scattered on the scarf. He asked if there was dog food, to which his teacher, feigning offense, said that, according to him, his mentor ate dog food. The student replied that a person's food becomes food for a dog, having said that if he does not want as he wants, he will get more. Watching him eat, he held his stomach. Having overcome his disgust, he also began to eat, asking how his food was, saying that when he's hungry, any food is worth a tenner. Kang Jin said that he would like his food to be collected separately, to which the teacher asked why, because this is already enough. He thinks he just suggested eating from one basket. Shared food is the simplest and most effective way to learn to share with others. The boy noticed something and asked how he would get to the top of the mountain and back in 2 hours. To which he replies that, as they say, you can't cut down a tree with one blow. At first it took him 6 hours to walk there and back, but now he can do it in about 4 hours. Kang Jin is already bored, and it's hard too. There is no strength left for anything else. To which Guan Nora grinned, thinking that it was right that there was no energy left. However, you can't let it get boring. Well, he basically understands him. For 2 months without a break, all he did was run through the mountains. Kang Jin can't lose interest. It was already long after midnight. They were sitting under the tree of the house. Kang Jin said that he could explain in words why hugging something that disgusts him. To which he replied, "What's wrong with that? It's cold outside, but it's warmer this way." "There are premises for such cases," the boy said, already fairly embarrassed. But the teacher replied that he was some kind of tasteless guy. Looking at the sky, he said how beautiful it is, to which he says that it is still an ordinary sky. Briefly and clearly organizing objects with their furnishings is also his ability. He thanked him for following his words, but the student replied that if you ask him something, he immediately starts grumbling. The old man asked if he could not happily accept what was said, why he was finding fault with every word, to which he said that in order to accept something with joy, this something must cause joy. He should do this not for himself, but for him. He wrote the hieroglyph Chan 10,000 times, but he still continues in the same spirit. He needs training in his thoughts. The student asked that we also need to train our thoughts. Having heard what was needed, he just sighed and talked about how tired he was. The mentor took his hands from behind. Having said that joining society is not so easy, he is not the only one. Everyone makes similar efforts. The guy, having finally given up, says that if necessary, he will do it. But the teacher said to remember, he does not require you to think about it, taking the place of another. He asked if the guy remembered his friend, and the young man in response asked if he was talking about the person who was somewhat similar to him. Having confirmed, he quoted him, "It was hard to death," to which the student remained silent. Therefore, Guan Nora asked him how he stood it, to which he replied, "I have learned the truth, and in order to get one thing, you need to give up something else." This is how he held on, sacrificed, and in the end everything he wanted was in his hands. The guy thought, "He held on, sacrificed, and in the end everything he wanted was in his hands," he mentally quoted to himself. It won't be easy. The things he understands are sometimes difficult to put into practice. If he doesn't even have an understanding of how something can be done easily. Having said not to worry, he is like his teacher and will constantly remind you of this when he is nearby. And even if he forgets all the time, the teacher will definitely repeat it again. Having asked that running circles uphill and writing a hieroglyph is his philosophy, to which he replied that almost. saying that at least his philosophy could be called garbage. Suddenly lifting him into the air again, picking him up again, he said that usually the human body is driven by the brain. But if the body reaches its limit, the situation changes in the opposite direction. To endure something like this is called restraint, and to overcome it is called will. And in his opinion, he really lacks these two qualities. That is why he learns the simplest method to develop endurance with will, to which he says that it could have been said in words, to which he told him that he should under no circumstances get close to a person who only talks with his tongue. Suddenly out of nowhere he laughed, hugging the boy. The young man shouted something to the old man so that he would not touch his face, to which he did not pay attention. It was only early morning, and Kang Jin was already at the training ground. While warming up and doing stretching, he thought that the teacher was still shirking today. He shirks himself, but he is forced to come there every day. Holding on, he jumped without lifting his hands from the ground. Raising his legs up, he tried to stand on his hands. But whatever it is, it's fun compared to Vows. Private school Bright Eye, this is apparently the place where Kang Jin used to study. Academician Young-in Moon was apparently dissatisfied with something while looking at the guy in front of him. Oh, he's annoyed that the young man hasn't read anything again. Having asked why he did not do this, he did not receive an answer to his question. If he had not had such high hopes, he would not have been disappointed now. And he thought that in his old age, he had met an outstanding talent. For some reason, as time goes on, his disappointment grows and grows. He asked him to say at least something, although no, he asked not to tell him that he couldn't keep up with the program. To which Kang Jin thought that no matter what he said, the teacher would still start screaming. As he expected, the teacher began to get angry and shout, to which the guy answers that he doesn't know the reason, although in general he doesn't understand. In response, he yells what he's talking about. To which the young man still calmly replies that he is talking about his teachings. The same one, slamming his palm on the table, said to tell him more specifically. Otherwise, how would he be able to explain it to him? With slight dissatisfaction, Kang Jin still repeats that he doesn't understand absolutely everything. The teacher got even more angry, thinking that the guy was simply mocking him, telling him to go to the room of repentance and think about his behavior. Rising sharply from his knees, he said that he understood, thereby alarming the academician. The teacher thought that he could simply kick him out of school. With his behavior, he was destroying the spirit of diligent study among other students. But when else did he meet such a person? He can pass on his name to future generations. 3 students stared at him, whispering among themselves. They haven't gotten tired of it yet. They probably still have something to say about him. Kang Jin was told that he should study, which he did. There was nothing complicated, but why should he do this, he asked himself. He can't even play with other children. He wondered what his problem was, why they were whispering and avoiding him. What did he do to be treated like this? Others only turned away from him, not coming close. They liked him when he bought glazed fruit on a stick or rice cakes. He didn't understand at what point everything went wrong. Probably all because of the incident when he killed a bird in front of everyone. I think so, but why? Kang Jin asked. It was fun. Nodding to himself, he looked at the other guy. There's nothing special about that guy, but guys follow him. Of course, there are those who run into conflicts, but there are many more of those who are friends with him. Once again, he begins to draw a hieroglyph on the ground. While he was drawing, the teacher, doing nothing, lay under a tree watching him. The guy asked himself how much longer he should do this drawing. One mountain marathon is already hard for him. While drawing hieroglyphs, would he be able to get along with people? Thinking about this, he looked at how his mentor assumed a sitting position. He called him over, saying, "Let's eat." The boy came instantly, throwing a stick on the ground. He opened the basket and took out a baked chicken. He asked the teacher why the first thing he always says is, "Let's eat." The same one says that because it is important, especially for a growing organism like him. Yes, whoever looked here would say that he simply has an insatiable appetite. While tearing off a leg from a baked chicken, he didn't notice how drooling began to flow. The student asked why he doesn't gain weight from such gastronomic addictions, to which he replied that in his younger years it was not bad to go hungry. Kang Jin asked, "Do they not give you food in the army?" They give, of course, very little. And besides, there is a rule that an ordinary soldier must always be hungry. The student said that he understood, but asked him to eat more slowly. It was unpleasant to watch. The same one said that this was his bad habit, telling him to eat too. The young man said that he would no longer run, but the teacher asked why. The guy said it was hard, and besides, there was no improvement. Did he think that he could fly across the sky and let the wind run with his palm, like 2 fingers on the asphalt? The guy says that if you don't do this, then it won't be hard. This is how our world works. What will you do without persistence and character? Guan Nor asked. To which he replied that everything is in order. The teacher knows that his father is rich. When he dies, all the property will go to him, so you don't have to worry about food and housing. But anyway, How about living a little more beautiful life? Asked the old man. You can live a simple life without any hardships, Kang Jin answered. But he still said that he wanted to make friends with people. Wouldn't it be better if he learned to fly and let the wind out of his hand? But what if after this they call him a monster who can fly and blow wind with his palm? Obviously something happened to him today, thought the teacher. The mentor said that you couldn't say anything in opposition to him. The guy says that this is proof that his words are true. Knelt down, he spread his arms for a hug. When the old man approached him, the guy shouted that it was disgusting. The same one hugged him. He jokingly began to say that he dared to call the teacher's manifestation disgusting, asking if something happened at school, to which he happily remained silent. Having not received an answer to his question, he began to tickle the young man. The student, through laughter, asked him to stop. The teacher told him to tell him, but he promised not to hide anything from him and shares everything. Seeing that the student understood, he stopped tickling him. After listening to the guy, he said that he was worried about trifles, to which Kang Jin says that everything is serious, actually. Unexpectedly for the guy himself, the teacher picked him up again. Taking the guy's arm with one hand and the guy's leg with the other, he threw him up, starting to spin it in the air. Kang Jin laughed when he was rocked, yet no matter how grown up he may seem, at heart he is still a little child. You said you don't understand? Asked the teacher, to which the guy replied yes. Then he asked the following question, is it necessary to understand? Putting him on the ground, he said that if you don't understand, don't do it. To which he asked in what sense this meant. The teacher answered him that it is not necessary to do this. It is enough to just pretend when you are ordered to do something. Pretend to do something when ordered. And if you don't understand something, pretend that everything is clear. The student asked why do this? Kang Jin, the question why is important to you. Or is it that you can get along with whoever you want? Asked the mentor. Choosing between this and that, he looked at the teacher with doubt in his eyes. You need to make every effort and be sincere in any task, began the lesson from academician Chung and Moon. If there is sincerity, then there is form. If there is form, then there is manifestation. If there is manifestation, then there is clarification. If there is clarification, then there is movement, the teacher said monotonously. The students were clearly bored, but listened obediently. If there is movement, then there is transformation. If there is transformation, then there is change. Only perfect sincerity in heaven gives the ability to change. He began to read in a new circle, repeating what he had just said. Stopping, he said Kang Jin's full name. Repeating his name again, he said that the content of today's lesson was chosen especially for him. Does he understand the meaning of the words spoken? The same one answered that no. If you don't understand, learn, said the teacher, slamming his hand on the table. Don't you think it's worth thinking about the meaning? The academician asked him again. Then don't ask me stupid questions, but explain it like a human being, thought Kang Jin. What a bastard! Not only do you show inappropriate behavior in class, but you also decide to ignore the teacher? He shouted. The guy boldly replied that he simply did not know what to answer. He immediately shouted that if you don't know, then you need to strain your brains and think. Without lowering his tone, he still shouted that if he was going to continue to behave like this, then quickly get out and don't even think about coming here. We need to uproot his lack of culture. If I don't show severity, he won't stop. That's what the teacher was thinking. What are you doing now? He asked when the guy stood up from his seat as if nothing had happened. According to the rules, a student cannot resist the words of his teacher. Since the teacher told me not to set foot here again, I must listen to him, Kang Jin said as he left. Rising sharply from the table, the teacher shouted that since when did he begin to obey him. Stopping, the guy said that it seemed to him that he was always upsetting the teacher, so he thought that he should at least follow his words today. To be honest, the academician really wants to throw him out. However, it would be a real shame if rumors spread that he failed to teach just one child and kicked him out of school. Moreover, if you think about the financial assistance he received from Master Lee, people will think that he robbed the Lee family and then kicked their heir out the door. After thinking about everything, he told Kang Jin to return to his place. The same one said that he himself told him to leave. He shouted again to sit down. The student, no longer resisting, said that he understood. Watching him sit down in his place, the teacher thought about what sin he had committed in a past life that such a student was sent to him. Be that as it may, looking at that guy, the unspoken leader of the class, the anger goes away a little. Tae-wan, will you explain the meaning of words to your slow-witted classmate? The teacher asked the student. Only a sincere person can change the world. Everything has a relationship, and sincerity can surprise even the heavens. Tae-wan answered without changing his face one bit. Having praised him, the teacher asked, then what did Confucius answer about those who do not ask themselves? What should we do? Having given permission to answer, he said, then I myself don't know what to do with them. Praising him again, he said that with those who do not even think about what needs to be done, nothing really can be done. Doesn't understanding come with age? Wouldn't it be strange if I, a 9-year-old child, understood all this at once? Kong Jin asked the teacher while the other children laughed. Because you lack understanding, you came to this place to study. The academician calmly answered him. He himself said that you need to study all your life, so in no case should you rush. However, now the teacher reproaches him for not understanding the material. Then what words should the guy follow now? The teacher looked at him with displeasure, biting his lip. He thought that he remembered this. It was already evening. The sun was already setting. Already at the Lee estate. Guan Nora was warming up with a stick, doing exercises. Old age is no joy. I'm already all out of breath from this. I think from now on he shouldn't shy away from training. Kang Jin has already come home from school. Having said hello, he, as always, asked how things were going with your studies. Was there anything unusual at school? The young man answered that it was, and before he constantly grumbled that everything was fine. What's happened? Asked the mentor. The guy entered the house, sat down at the table, and said that he had disgraced himself because of that goat. Disgraced? In terms of? The teacher asked again. He replied that that goat made a laughing stock of him. Guan Nora asked what kind of goat, to which he replied that he was the only one. He is even more unusual than I am, Kang Jin said. Is there anyone more unusual than you? The old man asked him. Interesting. He asked who it was. When others say good, that guy pretends to be generous. And when someone mocks someone, he pretends that he doesn't care. He is nothing but a sham. This is how Kang Jin described it. What a kind man, said the teacher. Why on earth is he a good-natured person? He is still a selfish person. The guy responded. How does this relate to you? Why are you angry? Asked the mentor. To which he tells him that that guy gets on his nerves. The old man asked that for no reason. The young man happily remained silent to this, lowering his head. The teacher grinned. Even he knows why he annoys him, but he himself doesn't. Kang Jin says that he is simply disgusted by him. You promised me that you would tell only the truth and obey me in everything, said Guan Nora. They trust that guy, right? The teacher asked with a grin. You try to death to get along with others, but it's all in vain. And that person does nothing, but is only praised. Having said this, he hit the nail on the head. The young man began to deny this, saying that there were others who hated him. And they, in turn, are hated by others? The guy didn't have anything to say to this. You may call that person that, but there is definitely a reason why others still like him. Even if you don't understand it, what did I teach you? Asked the mentor. Pretend that I understand everything. The guy answered. That's right. Pretend and learn that skill you don't have, said the old man. That is, he invites him to behave like a clown? If it's worth it, then sure. But he has pride. He doesn't want to make friends this way. A good excuse. Such an excuse says that he is simply not capable of anything. The mentor is not hinting at his pride, but at the fact that he refuses to work on himself when he has a chance to improve. It seems that these words touched something in the young man. Don't make such a face. What a not you like. Did I do something wrong? He asked Kang Jin. He said he didn't say that. Feeling a body near him, he widened his eyes, surprised, and stopped speaking. The teacher hugged him. The guy shouted what he was doing out of the blue. Both you and I, we both knew that it wouldn't be easy, said Guan Nora. The student agreed with him. The old man asked him if he would then listen to his words. Okay, but if I succeed, what will you do? He asked the mentor. This is in your own interests. What do you want me to do for you? He answered Kang Jin. In response, he said that he was a teacher, which means he should teach. He agreed, but only on one condition. If he reveals the merits of that friend, then he will teach him something new. The young man asked if he was serious. He also says that he does not welcome lies. He understood, of course, he doesn't like to do the same stupid things as that guy. But if you take this as a skill, then you need to learn it. Kang Jin enthusiastically ran to study. Whatever you say, it turns out that at school there is the absolute opposite of Kang Jin. You'll have to look there once. Walking around the schoolyard, academician Young and Moon, thinking about who he had annoyed in a past life. I was wondering how to rein in that boy. Hearing that someone addressed him, he turned his head towards the person. Kwok No greeted him, saying that it was an honor for him to welcome a teacher of such high reputation. He also greeted him in return, but asked what his name was. Bowing, he introduced himself as Kwok No and smiled. The academician himself had no idea why he was smiling while looking at him. Realizing that he was also a teacher, he approved this. What are you? What are you? Which of me, a simple warrior, is a teacher? You can't even put me close, Mentor Kwok said quickly. He replied that you can also learn something from warriors. Having said that, I am grateful for such words. He remembered why he came there. My student said he was studying with you, so my curiosity led me here. Say Kwok no. The academician asked which student he was talking about. He replied that he could be called the most daring child. This is Kang Jin. He was very surprised when he heard this name. Don't get me wrong. I come from writing, God willing. I only know how to write my name. Therefore, you can consider me a warrior mentor, he said. He replied, that's how it is. Yes, to tell the truth. It is so surprising that they even call me a teacher, since I can be said to be a parasite of the Lee family. It was so inconvenient for me to live at someone else's expense. And somehow it happened that I became Kang Jin's master. Sighing, the academician asked what business he was visiting him on. I heard that Kang Jin is upsetting you, said Teacher Kwok. Yes, he is very absent-minded in class. In-moon replied, tugging at his goat beard. Well, he's still a child after all. If you calm him down, he will immediately obey. Academician Chan was not sure that they were talking about the same person. At one glance, it is clear that he is stubborn as a donkey, thought the warrior mentor. He seems to be one of those who puts pressure on others with his authority. That's why Kang Jin didn't like the old man. I thought maybe I could help in some way, so I decided to visit you, said Kwok no. Kang Jin's anger cannot increase here. What's the point of pacifying him at home if he again accumulates at school? We need to solve this problem. Young and Moon looked out the window from which Kwok no was waving his hands at him. Not understanding what was happening, he exhaled. Walking along the road, he saw that Mentor Kwok was warming up. It began to rain heavily, and the clouds completely covered the sky. Through the downpour, Kwok no came to visit him with food and wine. Not expecting his arrival, Academician Chan smiled, closing the letters. Having laid out everything on the table, he began to pour alcohol into Teacher Chan's glass. Disciple. But this has never happened in my entire life. Do you know how many people wanted to learn from me? Young and Moon asked. I think there is nothing to say here. I know very well that it is a lot. Kwok no answered. However, that little guy, Kang Jin, doesn't understand this. His eyes were clouded by the fact that he was smart. There was no need to fall for it. That's right, Kang Jin is a bit of a lazy person by nature. He tolerates it because the head of the Lee family accepted me. But if it were his will, he would throw me out on all four sides. He quickly agreed with him. Probably the alcohol had an effect. There is no one to blame here except yourself. With the same persistence and intelligence, everything would have been different. Kwok no said that he understood him. He himself had to work hard. However, recently I have grasped a little the essence of how to deal with the boy. Now he does not chat in vain, but learns, said Mentor Kwok. To which Academician Chan looked at him with his mouth open, saying that he was hinting that Kang Jin was listening to him. He wouldn't say it's absolutely perfect. He simply managed to learn to work with the boy's character. Teacher Chan was beaming with curiosity about how he managed it. He said that he would be honest, because of the boy his authority was being undermined. Young and Moon shouted and scolded and reproached Kang Jin, but everything was like peas against the wall. Then may I dare to share a couple of secrets with you? He asked the academician, to which he vigorously nodded his head like a dummy. Don't say anything to the guy, you can't reproach or blame him, and especially in front of others, said Kwok no. In-moon told him to continue. Kang Jin's pride is far from being a fool's nose. He also has a very strong sense of competition. So you should take advantage of this, said the warrior mentor. The teacher asked how to use this. Kwok no said to move a little closer to him. Having approached, Teacher Kwok began to energetically tell him something in his ear. The academician's eyes lit up with happiness. In the next lesson, studying and not thinking is a waste of time. The teacher spoke monotonously and calmly. But thinking and not studying is destructive. The teacher suddenly looked at Kang Jin, who shuddered, anticipating that he would be asked. But they simply let him through, asking Tae-won what these words mean, which surprised the boy very much. The guy calmly answered the question asked that you cannot leave knowledge as just knowledge. Even if you learn something, without implementation, there will be no use from knowledge. Academician Chan said that this is true, because everything should be done not only in words, but also in deeds. He praised the student, saying that he clearly knew the material well in advance. He replied that he still lacked a lot. The teacher continued to read the letters, saying, teaching that bears fruit brings pleasure. Looking at Kang Jin again, he asked another student, Jae-moon, thus causing the boy to grind his teeth, who did not understand what was happening. He thought that the teacher was ignoring him, and precisely at that moment when he knew what this phrase meant, seeing that there was a result, he continued to ask one student after another, even without looking at Kang Jin. Having said that everyone was great, he patted the table with his palm as a sign of approval. Unable to bear it, the boy nevertheless turned to the teacher with dissatisfaction in his eyes. With a smile on his face, he asked the student what it was. He hesitantly asked the question why he alone was not asked. Seeing that the boy had fallen for the provocation, he replied that after listening to him, He thought about his behavior, adding that he really shouldn't have rushed him into learning, which made the guy grimace. He says that it was only his mistake to not admit that his abilities had deteriorated. From now on, he will not pay attention to his poor performance, nor will he blame him. This made the other kids look at Kang Jin with laughter. The young man clenched his hands in anger, thinking that the teacher took him for a stupid person. Academician Chan rejoiced in his soul, seeing the excellent result of his hard work, thinking that he needed to treat student No to a drink. He didn't think he would feel so calm. Lee family estate, the rooster crowed again, running away from something. Kang Jin kept trying to hit the rooster with a stone, but he always somehow dodged. As he was about to throw a stone at the unfortunate bird again, he heard his mentor address him, asking why he splashes out his anger on an innocent animal. Approaching, he asked why he was so active after school. He said there was a reason for this. Kwak No asked with a chuckle that it was because he was considered a small child. Kang Jin asked how he knew. The old man says that if the teacher is not aware of what and how his apprentice lives, this means that he is incompetent. The guy asked since when did he care about this. He responds by asking why he felt so offended. The young man turned away and said, "How could it be otherwise? It wouldn't have been offensive after they simply blatantly ignored him." The teacher, laughing, thinks that even if the guy lacks sympathy, then he still has a great desire to be recognized. This will be an opportunity for him to change. Squatting down, Kwak No said that he himself said that he saw no point in learning writing. That's why he doesn't teach. He says that his opinion on this matter has not changed much, however. The guy said that he doesn't like being ignored. The mentor answered him that since now he felt the need to study, then go ahead. This is exactly what he is going to do. To the old man's regret, as they say, he did something nasty and brought joy to his heart. The teacher encouraged him, saying that this was the way it should be. Well, he turns out to be a busy man, listening to the teacher, making friends, and now writing. The old man said that he would succeed. He doesn't like it when people don't pay attention to him. The guy with determination in his eyes said, "Right." While conducting the lesson, Academician Chan walked around the class, reading the letters from his memory. Still, Teacher Chan was not mistaken. Kang Jin is a smart child. This means that his teaching method was not good enough. What could be better in this world than the teaching of people? He got 2 such people, and this is his best blessing in recent years. He asked the students if they should read Woo Hyun song today. Everyone began to read silently without arguing. This is what real discipline in the classroom means. After the lesson, everyone scattered around the territory in all directions. While passing by, Kang Jin heard someone say that be that as it may, it is still difficult for the poor to live in this world. One person from the group that surrounded Taewon, clearly not with good intentions, told him to stop, saying that if they beat a person who only knows how to hold on to books, people will think that they are cruel. The other says that they will be better off without him. Kang Jin wanted to just pass without bothering them. As someone said, the guy is so arrogant, even though he has nothing. Having agreed that he needs to be taught a lesson so that he is less annoying with his existence. They apparently went completely crazy. Why touch a guy if his life is already so hard? How could they even hurt him so recklessly? Usually in such situations there should be no place for compassion or anything like that. This is what the master teaches them. The fat guy in dark pink continued to point his finger at the boy, saying that it seemed to him that just by looking at Taewon, bad luck would come. When it seems like they should be baptized, but they don't care. Hearing something, the fat man turned around to see what it was. But suddenly, Kang Jin flew up to him and hit him in the face with his fist, so much so that he took a step back. The second of the company that surrounded the guy with the books asked him what he was doing. Before he could understand what was happening, Kang Jin gave him a good kick in the stomach. Trembling with pain, he asked him what it all meant, to which he replied that he had to remain silent, which is what he did earlier. So he opened his mouth. Having kicked them, he asked them why they so wanted him to come to their house and break the plates of food. They immediately apologized, saying that they were wrong. Because of this company, he now feels dirty. He raised his hand for another blow, threatening them to be quiet at school. The boy grabbed Kang Jin's hand so that he wouldn't score them in the end. Taewon told him to stop, to which Kang Jin indignantly asked him what. He again told him to stop. He replied that he was not here to help him. He knows this, but still asks him to stop. What a kind soul the man is. Kang Jin thought that this was happening to him, had it really come that hard. The young man said to let him go before he beat him himself. Taewon says that he will let him go if he doesn't touch them, to which he asks with displeasure why he is worried about them. The guy says that he is not worried about them, but about himself, telling him to let them go. Kang Jin looks at him in bewilderment. Turning to the group, he told them to get out of here, agreeing that if the master found out about what happened today, they would not live. The same ones, rising from their knees, said, "Okay, we won't say anything." Turning back to Taewon, he said that he understood what he meant, asking if he was okay with everything now. He nodded, to which Kang Jin said that they would go to Tae-won's house. Surprised, he asked why they would go to his home. The young man replied that he needed to go to him because he needs something from him personally. Walking along the road to the village, Kang Jin walked looking around. He examined the old houses with some apprehension. Tae-won stopped, saying he was here. Without turning around, he said to say why he wanted to come here, to which Kang Jin replies that for the sake of study. Still, turning to him, he looked at the guy in bewilderment and asked that he wanted to study with a man who lived in such a small house. He replied that everyone likes him except that crowd, especially adults like him. Hearing the noise from the door opening, they turned their heads to see what was there. 3 small children ran out of the house, making noise and shouting that their hyung had returned. Leaning towards them, he asked them if they were hungry, saying that he would cook something to eat, not forgetting to introduce Kang Jin as a friend from school. They immediately bowed, greeting him. Tae-won said that these were his juniors. He began to introduce them one by one. The oldest of them is Hong, the younger girl is Janhwa, and the youngest is Mimi. Kang Jin also greeted them by introducing himself. The guy said that they should go into the house and greet his mother. He agreed without resisting. Entering the house, the guy knelt down next to the bed on which his sick mother was lying. Kang Jin introduced himself as Daewon's classmate. Not seeing a reaction, he looked at the guy who, turning to his mother, said that this time he did not come alone. He asked to forgive his mother. Because of her illness, she could not say hello to him. For some reason, Kang Jin began to look around. His grandmother's room looks 10 times better. Also, his mother looks older than his grandmother. Slapping him on the shoulder, he said that since they had already said hello, now they could go out. He said okay, and followed him to the exit. Kang Jin stood behind the guy, watching as he began to cook. He watched as he poured water into a jug and hung out the laundry. Sitting and watching him chop wood, the heir of the Lee family began to ask him who takes care of the house. If his mother is sick, who makes money? He calmly, without being distracted, replied that he was doing all this. Moreover, the master and the villagers helped them a lot. Thanks to them, he can learn. Kang Jin asked that, isn't it hard? He asked in bewilderment. Hard? He's just grateful that he can study. Happy, even in this situation. Do other people think the same as you? Kang Jin asked him. To which he asked what he was talking about. He asked if other people felt happy living the same way as him. Tae-won replied that it depends on each person's mentality. Having started chopping wood again, he says that he is happy because he has someone to take care of. He is lucky that he met such a wonderful person as a master, and he is happy that he can study. Is he happy living in such conditions? Marvelous. Tae-won says that in addition, studying and learning something new is pleasant, and there are no difficulties in learning. At least he has hope. Kang Jin looked at him in surprise and asked if he wanted to become an official. Turning around, he said that it was not so bad to dream of climbing the social ladder. This guy, he has much less time for everything, but he still studies better than the heir of the Lee family. Is he really worse than him? Mimi came up to him, pulled his sleeve, said that he was handsome, asking him to play with her. He reflexively directed his hand towards her. About to hit, he stopped. He decided to learn from this guy. And this is his younger sister. If he refuses her, then Tae-won will hate him. Kang Jin asked himself how other people behave in such situations. Not thinking of anything better, he lifted her into the air. As he began to throw it up, the young man noticed something. Watching her laugh joyfully, he wondered why she was so light. While circling with her, he asked how old she was. She answered that she was. By that time, other guys had also approached. They stared at them in bewilderment, calling them to eat. Already sitting at a small table, they wished bon appétit. Kang Jin stared doubtfully at the food in front of him. Others happily devoured their food. Tae-won told him not to be shy and start eating. He nevertheless took a bite of the potato, trying the addition to it, thinking that everything was too bland, and there was not enough salt. Seeing that his classmate had stopped eating, he asked if he liked it. To which he immediately looked at him. Exhaling, he asked, "Do people really eat this?" The guy responded to this by saying that he himself said that he came there to study. He can learn today how it is. Kang Jin asked how anyone could eat this. That's why those guys beat him up every day. He looked at Hong in surprise, noticing how he was looking intently at his Hyung's last potato. Tae-won, apparently also noticing this, gave it to him. The boy happily took it. Looking at this act, Kang Jin again asked himself what he could learn here. Already at sunset, he told him that he should not have given the younger his food. He generally understands why he gave it. But wouldn't it be a bigger disaster if he fainted from hunger? Since he is now the only person capable of feeding his family, it turns out that Tae-won is the only hope for his family. He looked away and confirmed this. Then he must first take care of himself, and therefore of his younger ones. If he faints, who will look after his family and home instead of him? Kang Jin said the truth, but if he wants to succeed, then he needs to feel comfortable. And when he sees his family well fed, he feels just as comfortable. He asked what the point was in this, and said that he would understand if he had brothers or sisters. Kang Jin again plunged into himself, starting to wonder where he went wrong, because there was a feeling that Tae-won was angry. The boy, looking at him, thought that it was very strange what he was learning now. Resting again under the shade of a tree, Kwak No slept. He dreamed of an unknown man who asked if he was afraid of him, to which the mentor, dressed in military uniform, polishing a spear, asks him why he should be afraid. He said that Kwak No is also unusual. He is the first who knows him, and is not afraid. He asked a man unknown to us how many people he had known since joining the army. He replied that there was no one. He was the first. He doesn't communicate with people, but because of this, he understands them even better. Pointing his finger at Kwak. No. He said that he was definitely that kind of weirdo. Kwak replied that he always talks nonsense. He just remained silent to this. The man warned him, telling him not to be too trusting. Vigilance is good for all of us, he finished, disappearing. The teacher sharply opened his eyes, driving away the last remnants of sleep. Rising to his elbows, he thought about why he dreamed about him so suddenly. Yawning, he asked himself why the boy was not there yet. Spitting on this, he lay back down. Kang Jin continued to run with all his might. Having already sweated quite a bit, he ran forward when he heard someone squeak. Looking into the bushes from which the sound was heard, he saw squirrels and a marsupial sloth that was clearly aggressive. Coming closer, he sat down to bushes, looking at the squirrel with a smile. The sloth had already killed 2 squirrels. With drool on his face, he looked at the remaining 2. Having prepared to attack them, he licked his lips and looked at them. The brown squirrel jumped at the same time as the predator. Kang Jin was still looking at this sight with a smile on his face. The sloth still killed the squirrel with just 1 blow, which is very sad. He tensely and intently watched what would happen next, how events would develop. The animal, without hesitation, bit through the squirrel's body with its side fangs. This reminded Kang Jin of Tae-won. He looked at all this carefully. Bending down, he picked up a fairly small stone, squeezing it tightly. The animal immediately turned its head, hearing some rustling from the bushes. The young man hit him right in the head with a stone, and he staggered back. Having fallen on its back, it began to squeal while the guy just stood watching it. Distracted by the squeak, he looked at the white squirrel. When he reached his hand towards him, the animal cowered in fear. Taking the baby squirrel in his arms, he said that he was lucky to be the only one alive. The little animal sitting in his arms looked at the boy. Gnawing on the seeds, the squirrel looked up again, jumping towards the guy who was reclining on the table. Having come running to the young man, it sat down in his arms, and having settled down well there, fell asleep. When he saw this, he immediately drove him away, asking what kind of arrogance. The animal came back, starting to look at him with a pitiful gaze. Kang Jin again began to chase away the squirrel, saying that he was crazy. He was about to hit the animal on the forehead with his finger, but he didn't do it when the squirrel looked at him. Looking at him, the guy said that he should not have brought him and made a useless promise to the mentor. Frowning his eyebrows, Kang Jin looked at the squirrel that calmly lay down to sleep in his hand. He carefully placed it in the basket with the blanket. Stroking a squirrel with your finger for a good night's sleep. Kang Jin slept in his chambers until the rooster began his song early in the morning. Rising, he made his bed and began to get ready. Approaching the basket, he poured some seeds into it, saying that all he knew how to do was sleep. Sitting down at the table, he began to write down notes about the squirrel. Early in the morning, he ate very little food. Coachman Ian said that he was most likely a baby. Before going to bed, the young man filled a small bowl with water, but could not drink it. After which, he decided to draw water with his little finger and give it to him, after which the amount of food consumed increased. A month has passed. The guy thinks he's definitely gotten bigger. He was going to weigh him. Having finished writing his daily report, he looked at the baby squirrel. He smiled looking at him, saying that he didn't think that he would raise him for more than 2 months. Teacher Kwak came to him, asking if it was time for him to go to school. He said that he would go now. He was just filling out this little guy's diary, to which he asked if it was time to give him a name. Kang Jin asked in response why he should be given a name. The young man calmly said that he was not interested. Kwak No looked at him doubtfully, wondering if it was time for the boy to show his affection after raising him for 2 months. And then, he will not have the feeling of a killer, but the feeling of education. He needs to get used to this feeling. The boy asked his mentor if it was time to fulfill his promise. He asked what promise he was talking about. The young man said that the teacher said that if he takes good care of him for more than a month, he will tell him how to shoot a fireball. He still remembered. There was a small problem for the old man. He was obviously nervous. What should he teach this guy now? Kwak No sent him to school, wishing him good luck. Having entered the house, he began to walk around the room, thinking what to do. He was not tired of climbing the mountain. And if you think like that, then the time is shortened. He climbs the mountain too quickly. Is this possible for a 9th child? He must teach him something that can both interest him and at the same time tire him. The good news is that he has some time to hang out with Tae-won. The children screamed in delight as they looked at what Kang Jin brought them. He asked if they could cook it. If not, then he could ask his housekeeper to cook it and send it to them. The girl replied that no, she could cook. The children joyfully ran into the house. Tae-won thanked him, saying that he had not seen his baby so happy for a long time. Kang Jin again says to make him understand his words and actions. No matter how much he thought, he still did not understand Tae-won. He says that the young man asks the same thing every time. Seeing that he does not understand, the young man asks how people will like it. The guy asks what it is that he wants to understand. He answers yes. Tae-won said that you can live well without this. Kang Jin looked at him with a silent question in his eyes. He replied that when there are 10 people, then 10 different colors appear. And if 100 white people gather, then they all also have different colors. That is, he does not need to copy it, but do what he considers necessary. He immediately replied that he was not copying, but simply wanted to learn. The boy immediately asks why he is studying. Kang Jin made a dissatisfied face and looked at his classmate. Tae-won thought it was definitely weird. Therefore, he asked the boy why he was learning from the master, to which he replied that everyone does this. He asked if it was possible to be more specific. After thinking a little, Kang Jin replied that people show loyalty to the knowledgeable, not to the ignorant, and he listens to him well. Tae-won looked at him, saying that his situation was completely different. He studies in order to get out of poverty. Thus, people learn the same thing, but the way they perceive and think about it differs. They have different roads, different thinking. He doesn't need to be like him. Kang Jin was born different. What is the point in understanding a boy from a village and a poor family at that? Deeply immersed in himself, he thought that he was right. But how infuriating it was. Why did the master give him this task? He doesn't know. He won't learn because they are different. But it's true that many people like him. He doesn't understand him either, but Kang Jin needs to understand Tae-won. One thing he knows for sure is that all white people are white. Other children cannot refuse him his request, but for some reason he resolutely refuses. The guy said, don't misunderstand him, he doesn't want to have a friend like him. So he talks about the same thing. Taking out something, the young man said that then they would continue to see each other. Taking out a bag of coins, he handed them to Tae-won, saying that there is nothing free in the world. He asked where he got this money from. Kang Jin's world is very different from his. In his world there is a responsibility, and also a price for everything you do. Tae-won immediately became angry, calling him by his full name. The boy thought why he refuses money when he lives like this. People are different. That's what he just taught him. Plus, making friends is good. To which he replies that this is completely different. Kang Jin said, see you tomorrow, and threw the bag of coins on the ground. He shouts for him to take it, to which the young man only waved his hand, leaving. But he still stopped, frozen for a second, as if he remembered something. Turning around, he shouted to him that if he didn't want to keep them, then let him buy something to eat with them. Otherwise, every time he comes to them, he goes hungry, shouting that let's eat well next time. The guy still held the bag with inner doubt. Kwak No and Kang Jin stood looking at the beautiful waterfall. The boy asked him why they were here. It was still cold to swim. He happily replied that he would teach him how to throw a fireball. The teacher grinned and looked at the boy. He asked with a question in his eyes why they are here. He replied that you can't learn this just like that. For this, he must have inner strength. This means he needs to explore his body. Showing his muscles, the mentor said that he would understand everything right away if he trained like him. Kang Jin says this is the first time he's heard of exploring your body or anything like that. He boasted that only those as strong as him know about this. The young man immediately asked to teach him this as soon as possible. Therefore, in order to find your inner strength, you need to start breathing correctly. Kwak No asked his ward how he had taught him to breathe before. The teacher said that no matter how hard it was, he should breathe only through his nose. If he gets tired, he can exhale through his mouth, but he told him to always breathe through his nose. This is breathing correctly, and this is how internal air is created. It will be difficult at first, but the more you practice, the faster you will feel that it has become much better. You will also need to draw in your stomach as you exhale and push it out as you exhale. It's the other way around. That's what Ekkion is. People live with human energy, but when it comes to absorbing the energy of nature, it is called Ekkion. The boy began to trying to use only the name technique. Thanks to this, he will be focused for a long time. It won't be easy for him. Of course. He thought about something else for a moment and immediately became confused. This is why it is difficult to learn inner strength. It's very difficult to concentrate, Kwak No said, suddenly lifting the boy into the air. With all his might, he threw it into the lake with a waterfall. Having emerged from the water, he irritably asked the mentor what he was doing. He replied that he was helping him. The teacher told him to go straight into the waterfall. The young man objected, saying that it would hurt. To which he replied that he needed to learn patience. The guy asked why he needed it. Kwak No replied that it was necessary. Having ceased to be indignant, he swam to the waterfall. Having swam to him, the young man shouted that he was there. The teacher responded by shouting for him to come in. The boy only hoped that he hadn't just made it up. Sitting under the powerful jets of water, under its pressure he felt only pain. The teacher shouted at him to do the breathing technique while he was sitting there. He asked why, to which he told the guy that he would understand when he tried. Sitting under the waterfall, he tried to concentrate and perform a breathing technique. Through the water, he heard that the master was trying to shout to him. He asks him if he knows why so many Taoists practice Tao underwater. But how can he know? Because concentration is practiced there very well. It seems that he's starting to succeed. Only the feeling of pain bothers him a little. If the guy continues in the same spirit, he will get used to it and learn. The mentor shouted that there was something like millet under his navel. Even if it doesn't exist, imagine that you are creating it with your breath, said Quack. No. The young man began to recite this to himself like a mantra. While the boy was busy, his teacher lay down on the pebbles near the lake, putting his feet in the water, wondering if he had done the right thing. Okay, maybe this isn't so stupid, the old man thought to himself as he assumed a sitting position. The general said that if you work hard on this breathing method, you can even see your great-grandchildren. While serving in the army for decades, he never had a general like him. If you think about it like that, shouldn't you be doing something like that at this age? Looking at the guy who trained without sparing himself, he admitted that he was never able to create millet inside himself. Lying down again on the stones, he was not sure that the boy could handle it. The next day, the school where academician Chan taught was, as always, full of young guys. Kang Jin was walking around the courtyard of the educational institution when he suddenly met Tae-won. He silently stared at him. Was it really because of that money? Tae-won said that he would not be able to return the money, to which the heir of the Lee family looked at him in confusion. The guy looked away and said that his mother suddenly developed a fever yesterday, and she had to call a doctor, so he wouldn't be able to bring them back. To which Kang Jin only said that he understood, agreeing that now thanks to this, there is even more meaning to his money. He got angry and asked if he felt good about the fact that his classmate's mother was in critical condition. The young man realized that he had blurted out and looked at the guy. Having come to his senses, he said that this was not what he meant, and it was precisely because of this that he was learning from him. He replied that he was beginning to understand him perfectly. Kang Jin shook his head and said that he doesn't need to give the money anyway. He can consider it as payment for his education. He looked at Tae-won, who for some reason extended his hand to him. Tae-won said that it will take them a lot of time to understand each other, but he will definitely return the money. Otherwise, it will be a blow below the belt for him. The boy smiled as he listened to what he was telling him. Agreeing with him, he shook hands and said that after he understood him, he would take back his money, with huge interest. They went together to Tae-won's house with gifts for his youngest. Tae-won looked at what Kang Jin was carrying and thanked him, saying that they would like it. He said that all this can be bought for money, but he refuses it, but thanks for it. To which the guy replied that this is different. It means location, and money is just sympathy. Kang Jin asked what's the difference. Tae-won replied that if he doesn't know that, then he still has a lot to learn. Turning around, the boy said that he should try to teach. It was awkward to walk in silence, so the young man thought about what to start a conversation about, filling the silence. Turning to his classmate, he asked how his mother was. He replied that the problem was a lack of energy, but thanks to the money he gave him, now everything is fine. The boy said that he has ginseng at home. He will bring him the root. They say it helps restore energy. The guy replied that he knows that it is very expensive. Kang Jin looked at him and said, his friend's mother is sick, and he worries about her. This doesn't count as sympathy. Tae-won just sighed with a smile. Besides, friends need to be helped in trouble, and they are friends. The guy confirmed this by saying out loud that Lee Kang Jin, the son of a rich family, is his friend. Children ran around the yard, playing and catching each other. With a straight face, Lee Ji-won entered the courtyard of the estate. One of the workers of this place ran up to him. The head of the Lee family asked if there were any problems, saying that if you need anything, then do not hesitate to contact the commander-in-chief. He immediately replied that there was nothing, and the children and workers were fine. The servant bowed and said that the guests were already waiting. Lee Ji-won just nodded his head. Already sitting at the table with other people, he was reading some letters. Putting the message on the table, he said that it was not easy. Others responded, saying that it is not easy, but the count is stable. This is proof that there are many people who can be killed. The situation will become more and more comfortable. While listening to them, Lee Ji-won said that he didn't think they should like it just because the organization's power was growing. The bigger it gets, the more tears are shed. One of his interlocutors apologized, saying that he did not mean it that way. The head of the Lee family continued to say that this means that they should not do this, saying, forget about it. They move on to the next point. Kang Jin and teacher Kwak were again on the site where they trained the character John. He walked along the line of the hieroglyph while his mentor was indignant and said that his steps were not the same. He latched on again, saying that inhalation and exhalation were incorrect. At this point, the boy began to be indignant, saying that he couldn't even breathe on his own. What kind of training was this? The old man said to do as he says. Turning around, the boy looked angrily at the master. He said that the main thing now is correct posture, and we need to achieve well-coordinated teamwork. The young man replied that he would rather just run up the mountain alone. They don't even train mongrels like that. The old man grinned and said that he thought that you could learn the fireball from a bay of floundering. The boy turned away from him and said that he was going to reach this millet anyway. He asked if that was why he was rude to his teacher. Kang Jin sulked, but still went to carry out the task assigned to him. Now the old man does not need to think about what to teach him, at least for a year. While waiting for the lesson to start, the children scattered into groups and talked happily. Taewon was sitting quietly and reading when someone's utensils fell onto the nearby writing table. Sitting down at the same table, Kang Jin stared at his classmate sitting next to him, silently surprised at his concentration. He tapped Taewon on the table, drawing his attention to him. When he saw the boy, he was surprised because he didn't see him when he came. The young man, looking at him, said to guess who the bookworm is. The boy asked if the book had been taken away. The guy replied that he was not from such a rich family as him. Kang Jin told him to stop talking about it. He didn't think making friends was so difficult. If he had known, he wouldn't have even started. That's why they say it's difficult to find friends. Friends are friends. What are real friends? This is difficult to answer. He would say that it is very, very difficult. When they said that the master was coming, everyone lined up, sitting straight. Kang Jin, speaking quietly, turned to Taewon, saying that as soon as the lesson ends, we'll go to the market together. Already going to Taewon's home after the market, the young man was twirling in his hand a rope with 4 roosters tied. The boy said he didn't have to do this every time he came. He easily agreed with this. Having walked a little forward, he noticed that his classmate had stopped. Turning around, he looked at him. Kang Jin told him to let him live normally, otherwise he won't be satisfied with just potatoes. As if he understood something, he said meaningfully about, continuing that he probably irritates him when he says that. He replied that it was possible, thereby forcing the boy to take on a thoughtful expression on his face. Having thought of something, Kang Jin pointed his finger at him and said that he was ashamed to eat from him every time, so he buys something every time. Hearing his answer, Taewon froze for a second. Starting to laugh, he praised him, saying that he was a quick learner. They continued on their way to the house, talking about this and that. Kang Jin did not understand himself, surprising himself that he was in a good mood. Although, why bother thinking about it? The main thing is that he feels good. Having almost reached the house, they saw a tramp robber in the middle of the road. He spat on the ground and said to come to him. Kang Jin asked Taewon if he knew him, to which he replied that this was a neighbor's bully, saying that it was better to just get around him. Seeing that he was simply blatantly ignored, he turned around, staring at them. Having overtaken the guys, he stood in front of them, blocking the way, saying that when an adult addresses them, they must answer immediately. Taewon looked at Kang Jin as he grimaced and asked the man if he knew him. Looking around the boy, he noticed a bag of money, saying that he knew it, pointing to the bag tied around his waist. He said he just needed to know what was important to him. Looking at the place to which the tramp was pointing, the young man said that he would regret it. He just laughed, saying that he was just a little kid who didn't know the outside world and how it worked. Looking at the boy, he asked if he was afraid of him. He looked him straight in the eyes and said that there was no need for him to be afraid. Apparently the boy's words hurt him because he rushed at him, screaming and asking if he wanted to die so early. The young man, without hesitation, kicked him in the painful place. The man, bent over in pain, called him a not very nice word. He rushed at him again, but this time Kang Jin jumped out of there with ease. He still easily continued to dodge the tramp, amazed at how slow he was. The boy was surprised to notice that the fact that he was forced to train helped him. The young man jumped back to an even greater distance, mentally saying that he was so slow that he could fall asleep. He shouted to the tramp that he needed to try harder. The man, seeing that he couldn't catch anything from the frisky guy, attacked the guy who was standing aside, hitting him on the cheek. When Taewon fell to the ground, he began to kick him, hitting him in all places. Probably after such a beating he would leave some serious bruises. Kang Jin clearly didn't like this, so much so that he threw this bag of money at the tramp. Seeing what had fallen, he stopped hitting the boy, looking at the bag of coins lying there. The boy told him to take the money and get lost. The man replied that if it had been done that way right away, he wouldn't have had to beat the guy. After punching Taewon in the face again, he said that this is the reason why making friends is worth it. He is very lucky. Taking the money, he left. Meanwhile, Kang Jin helped his classmate to his feet, asking if he was okay. Having risen, he asked what happened to the money, and whether there was much of it there. To which the boy said that it doesn't matter now. Taewon was beaten, and he himself lost. The guy said that the tramp didn't approach them because he knew the circumstances of his family. Most likely he was targeting Kang Jin, so the guy told him to be careful. The young man asked if he was all right. He replied that yes, he was already used to this, saying he didn't worry about it. Putting his hand on Kang Jin's shoulder, he said that they were already waiting. He replied that he would go home. Tae-won, surprised, asked why. Having given the roosters into the hands of the guy, he said to give them to the baby. He left without saying goodbye, without turning around when his name was called. Kang Jin thought that he would not have lost alone, but because of him he lost, but he is not going to leave it like that. The boy clenched his hands in anger, remembering Tae-won's face full of pain when he was beaten. He will take revenge on him apparently on that same vagabond robber. Unsuspectingly, Teacher Kwak enjoyed his meal. Having poured alcohol into a glass, he said that the snacks and drinks were very good. Suddenly, Kang Jin burst into his chambers. He asked the student that shouldn't he come back later today. The boy immediately attacked him with a request to teach him martial arts. The old man asked what he was teaching him, to which he replied that running every day, breathing correctly, and writing hieroglyphs are not martial arts. The mentor asked him why this suddenly happened. The young man replied that he just wanted to learn. He was not interested in anything else. Well, what is he not interested in? The teacher cannot control his feelings and he cannot teach him skills, especially for this guy. He called out to him again. Kwak-no agreed to this. Even if he starts learning it, it will take some time. Going out into the street, they approached a tree, and the old man took a fighting stance. Pouring some chi energy into the wooden sword, he began to hit the wood with precision in his hands. Looking at all this, Kang Jin silently stared at the old man. He asked if he should show it again. He again began to show the same technique as a minute ago. The boy asked what it was. He responded by saying to take a closer look at exactly how he cuts, to which he says that even children can do this. Smirking, the old man told him to try. The young man also got into a fighting pose and began feverishly hitting the wood with his sword. Turning to the teacher, he said that after trying just once, he succeeded. The mentor told him to try again. Still, after listening to the teacher, he tried again. The old man said that everything was wrong. How can you be so stupid? Kwak-no said to give him the sword so that he could show everything again. He said to watch carefully how he does it. Kang Jin didn't understand what the difference was between what the teacher did and what he himself did. The mentor raised his sword from his back, aiming exclusively at the tree. He accurately calculated each blow. Noticing this, the boy began to look more closely at the master's movements. Turning to the student, he asked if he had seen, to which he replied that yes, but it did not seem that it would be difficult to repeat. The old man told him to try. Taking the sword in his hands, the young man purposefully walked towards the tree. He does everything the same as his mentor, but their blows are different. Still, this seems obvious, and what's so complicated about it? The boy began to hit the places where the master had hit. An old man standing behind him asked if it was working. Understanding from the outside and doing it yourself are two different things. The young man again began to randomly hit the tree, as he remembered the teacher doing. Looking at the actions of his student, Kwak-no was very surprised, because even he needed a lot of time to make the blows accurate. Standing behind the guy, he watched as the boy delivered precise blows to the tree over and over again. Seeing Kang Jin trying his best, he scratched his head as he thought about how he did it. He told him to stop. The boy was going too hard. He replied that the master himself said that you need to learn to do it right, which is what he is doing now. He hugged him from behind, taking the sword from his hands. Stopping, the young man asked what was the matter. Throwing the wooden sword aside, the teacher began to examine his hands. There is no living space on them. He won't even be able to move his brush. The guy replied that it didn't hurt him at all, but this is only because he is excited now. Tomorrow morning, he will be shocked by this pain. And this is what the teacher tells him. Everything has been ripped off, so what to do now? He replied that he would recover soon. The mentor asks since when he stopped listening to him. Kang Jin had nothing to answer to this. Listening to what the boy was saying inaudibly, Kwak-no only caught that the boy wanted revenge. And who knows? When he asked who he wanted to take revenge on, the boy replied that he was the tramp who had broken his pride and hurt his only friend. What is wrong with this world if a young man can want to take revenge on someone so badly? In life, there are such and similar things. But he must do it. That's why he trains, even through pain. Telling him not to be so reckless is like killing peas. Kwak-no told him not to talk nonsense about how he was studying martial arts to protect himself. He was forced to learn them so as not to die. But the boy doesn't have to live like that. The young man fell silent tensely. When it comes to revenge, he won't stop with just a few blows. He's not going to kill him, is he? The master suggested that he do so. If he wants to take revenge, then he needs to do it well. Wouldn't it be a shame if he made a mistake somewhere and got beaten up? That's why the guy asked to teach him real martial arts. Then they will act as follows. He asked the boy to make a hole in the tree. The guy thought he heard something, so he asked again. The mentor said when he could pierce that tree with a wooden sword, he would be able to take revenge on him. Having agreed that he should not approach him until then, Kang Jin turned around and looked at the tree, whose only bark was damaged. Kwak No sat on a small rock, watching the young man practice the task with the tree. The boy is very persistent and wants to learn no matter what. Even if he beats for many days, he will not be able to make a hole in the tree. I wonder when he will reach his limit and stop trying. Then you will have to return his attention. He doesn't have a specific strategy, he just hits over and over again. Noticing that he had folded his outer clothing to the side, he remembered that these clothes were too big for him. I'll have to make some workout clothes. The old man turned to Kang Jin, saying that he was most likely tired of hitting wood. Why not do something else? The boy asked if he meant that he should try to create millet again. This is very important because it is the basis of internal energy. Kang Jin asked if he really needed to do this. To which Kwak No replied that yes. He heard that if you train for 3 years, everything will work out. He looked at him incredulously, asking if he had heard the truth or was being a fool. The old man immediately realized the mistake, correcting him that if you train, everything will work out. The young man nevertheless agreed with him. The boy was sitting on a large stone in the lotus position, trying to concentrate. He thought about how he could create this millet. Concentrating, he tried to find millet, repeating this word like a mantra. Something began to appear. Looks like he's succeeding. Straining, he tried to move the glowing ball, but unfortunately it didn't work. The ball blinked and disappeared. This means that he must bring it to the solar plexus. First, you need to catch it, and then move it. You need to learn how to control it normally, and from that moment on, raise it up. Concentrating again, his millet began to glow. Sharply opening his eyes, he realized that it was already night, and his teacher was standing warily next to him, looking at him. He called him by name with an O in his voice. Was the boy really able to create it? He didn't move from his spot the whole time, so Kwak No tried to wake him up. The old man asked if he succeeded. The boy replied that he had no idea, but he felt something was wrong. He did it. The old man was so happy. Everything the general said was true. True, before this no one could do this. But he even likes it, just watching it. Starting to shiver from the cold, Kang Jin said that it was strange. It was definitely warm inside, but he was cold. The teacher immediately sat down next to him. He began to rub the boy's arms and shoulders, saying that the mountain breeze was very cold. Grinning, the young man said that he had dealt with the millet, asking what next. Sighing, Kwak No drank tea looking at the busy street at the same time, thinking, the boy really did it. He tried so hard, but it didn't work. But this is not the problem now. Kwak No came up with a task for a long time, but he had already done everything. It seems the old man has come up with something. It should work, although he's not sure. However, is it convincing enough that he only tried it once? Apparently having found an excellent solution to the situation, his mood jumped. Kang Jin looked doubtfully at what the teacher showed him. Staring at a small tree that had apparently been planted quite recently, he asked his mentor what the point was in jumping over it every day. He asked if he had ever given him something meaningless. Squatting near a tree, the young man asked if it was necessary every day. The old man said yes, to which the student asked why he needed this. He smiled and began to tell either a legend or a story. Once upon a time there was a hired killer. Kwak No began. He chose a calf, calling it his training partner. Time after time, he kept training, jumping over the animal every day. He jumped for the last time when his calf grew to the size of a buffalo. Analyzing the story he had just heard, he came to the conclusion that if he jumped over it every day, he would someday be able to jump over a tree. The teacher said to try first, to which he asked how quickly the tree would grow. To this, Kwak No replied that it does not matter how fast it grows. It is important for him that he follows his words unconditionally. Because about the millet, he also didn't believe him. Sighing, the boy looked again at the tree in front of him. Walking into the yard, Kang Jin called the rooster and the squirrel by their nicknames, asking them to come to him. They immediately became alarmed, slowly walking towards him. Looking at them menacingly, he repeated again, but in a ruder form, so that they would come to him. They immediately rushed towards him as fast as they could. They stopped dead in their tracks when the boy said that he had overfed them, since they couldn't even come quickly. The squirrel did not miss the opportunity, starting to climb onto his shoulder and rub its head against his cheek. But the young man sent him flying with just one finger. Seeing how the rooster caught the squirrel, he asked what kind of trick this was. Exhaling, he looked back at his pets, thinking about how infuriating this was. Taking pity, he again called them to him. They joyfully ran towards him. With a smile on his face, he began to stroke them, which clearly gave them pleasure. The street was busy as always. People were doing what they were walking around, talking to each other. Looking out the window, Kwak No and Kang Jin watched people. The boy asked why they were here. He could drink tea at home, to which the old man replied that you can drink tea, but not watch people. Looking at the street, the young man asked, "Is there anything to watch?" Looking around again, the guy noticed a shop where noodles were cooked and sold. The boy nevertheless offered him food. The teacher said to look again at the people walking along the shopping street. Kwak No asked him what he saw, to which the young man replied that he saw Ajuma and Ajusi. Ajuma diligently prepares the food while the ajushi waits for it to cook. The mentor confirmed this by telling them to guess what they are thinking about now. The boy replied that the Ajuma thinks about cooking, and the ajushi thinks about how he will eat it. The master asked for details. The teacher told him to look more carefully and say their real thoughts. He asked how he could know. Kwok No asked the student why he thought they were so kind to each other. Everything is obvious here. This is the seller and the buyer. But there must be other reasons. The old man looked at the boy seriously. In a second, his face changed. He asked the young man if he knew why people smile. He answered because everything is fine. In his opinion, if a person smiles, then everything is fine with him. Feigning a sad grimace, he asked what if they had such upset faces. The boy looked at the teacher in bewilderment. What would happen if they walked around with sour faces? He didn't think about it. It is the seller and the buyer, and they will be kind to each other. But what would he think if they were upset? When the guy started to answer, the mentor interrupted him, saying exactly what he wanted to say, but the boy looked at him displeased. The owner may not want to sell because she has health problems. Or it may be that the buyer has no money, so he cannot afford anything other than this food. And they still smile. What he sees on the outside is just a mask. He must learn to feel what is inside. While they were talking, the tea house continued to fill with people. And yet he is special, and not strange at all. Putting his hands on his, the mentor said that it was a long journey. For now, he is only aware of people's attitudes. First, let's see their feelings. The old man asked if he had talked to that boy. The student said yes. He said that he looked like him. But he is not the same because of the face he sees now. The teacher wants to say that now his real feelings are reflected on his face. And he always had a stone face, whether it was sadness, joy, or anger. But he was completely different. He says that his face shows emotions as they are. The old man told him to practice reading his emotions, as if reading a book, of course. This is not the only thing he needs to learn. What is going on inside a person and what is going on outside may differ. Because of this, emotions can be faked, Kwok No said with a smile that first will learn to read them. Kang Jin just looked at his mentor silently. One of Taewon's youngest opened the lid with joy on her face, seeing a cast iron full of rice. The rest of the kids were playing in the yard. Kang Jin leaned on the doorframe and watched them. He remembered the teacher's words that they learn things that ordinary people consider natural by looking at their friends. The boy thought why it was so difficult. The teacher said that the same expression is different for children, young people, and old people. Taewon approached him, asking why he was so distracted today. He never heard an answer to this question. Kang Jin turned to the guy, asking if he could ask him a question. The young man settled down next to Taewon, starting to question him. Of course, this can be confusing. The teacher said that when he gets used to it, he will understand everything. He said that you need to look at the facial expression and that it depends on the situation. But he is not the only one with this problem. There are many people who have no idea. If you sincerely understand his experience, then yes. Kang Jin asked what to do. The guy asked if he remembered the day when he first came to his house. The young man nodded at this. He means whether he remembers in detail what happened that day. Kang Jin replied that it was nothing, although his memory was clearly better than his. Taewon asked him to remember a moment from that day. He then said that he should not share food with his younger ones. And Taewon then replied that his words, although logical, were better to feed them. Now everything is exactly the same as then. The same fact is perceived differently. He is currently learning this from Taewon. Next, let's talk about different facial expressions. About the day the boy brought food. A day for which he is undoubtedly grateful. His younger ones were also happy, but what about him? Kang Jin replied that he was angry then. He was angry, but in his soul he felt gratitude to him. That is, he was angry and grateful at the same time. Although a person's state of mind is manifested on the face, there may also be circumstances in which it is not expressed. Taewon thinks this is what his teacher told him. Kang Jin understood what he was talking about, but it's hard. That's why they call him special. The boy grinned when he heard this. Kang Jin confirmed this, saying that it is true that this is why he is called special. The young man again trained with the tree, warming up for jumping. Having collected himself, he jumped, flying over the top of the tree. Looks like next year he won't be able to jump over it. Kang Jin again makes circles from mountain to mountain. The guy studied the same, but more calmly. Trained millet under the waterfall as ordered. Summer and autumn passed unnoticed, and the long-awaited winter came. The boy was warming up, getting ready to start training with a wooden sword near the very tree on which he practiced his blows. He has grown a lot over these seasons. The young man took a fighting stance, holding the sword tightly in his hands. Having filled his body with energy, he began to strike the tree. Having already drilled the hole, seeing the result, he went back into the house satisfied. The tree already looked pretty bad after training on it. The deep lines made it stand out. Kwok No was rummaging through the library, apparently looking for something. Every now and then when he picked up a book, he leafed through it. due to the fact that they contained a lot of unnecessary text. One of the workers at this place saw that he had been looking for something for quite a long time. Approaching him, he asked if he needed help. The old man asked him if they had a book on martial arts. He replied that they had it somewhere. Kwak No said that it would be nice if it also had pictures. He beamed when he heard this, confirming that there was such a thing. He immediately went to another building, starting to look. Having found it, he blew the dust off the book, which apparently had been lying there for quite a long time. Opening it and flipping through it, he saw only pictures of people. This book was clearly for kids. Although he wanted to throw it away for kindling, today it will bring a little extra money. Kwak No looked at the book sadly, thinking about his own thoughts. Kang Jin practiced jumping over a tree again. Having collected himself, he jumped, trying to fly over him. He nevertheless jumped over, but since he did not know how to land, he fell to the ground, rolling. Turning joyfully to the teacher, he asked if it worked. He praised him and said that he could do it if he wanted. The young man said that it is easier said than done, to which the mentor was indignant, saying that he did not tell the guy to do only what he told him. Kang Jin said it feels like walking on a flat tree, quack. But hearing this, he looked away, coughing. Stretching his shoulder, he looked at the teacher and said with a chuckle, "Let's go." Even though he is his student, he talks like crazy. Is there any point in overcoming this without interfering? It's unlikely. The old man was thinking about how to use force. The boy was training on the rocks near the waterfall, elegantly, repeating the attacks of martial art techniques over and over again. Suddenly, when the guy made another lunge, wind appeared from his palm. Quack but couldn't believe it. The young man managed it. Having tried again, he still got a breeze. With slight bewilderment, he turned his head towards him, asking what this was, that same fireball, while the teacher himself was in complete shock. Smiling joyfully, the guy said, "It worked." He is also smart. This little guy remembers how many times he wet his bed when he was a child. Therefore, this stubborn former hard worker took him with him as his best student. This guy may have really come down from heaven. He didn't ruin everything for nothing. No. He's here to try to teach him at least something. The same simple humanity. While he was thinking about everything, a worker approached him with a book in his hands. He said that it has the most pictures, and a little less text. He was immediately happy when he heard this. Kang Jin demonstrated techniques while the children, sitting a little further away, admired him. Pointing at them, the young man said that they are too frail, and in the future they will do what Shijin shows. Turning to the bookworm named Tae-won, he said that this concerns him too. He said without raising his head that he would try. The guy quoted his words, to which the second guy gave up, raising his hands. He said that he will train with him because Kang Jin has negative memories. The young man agreed with him, saying that a lot of them had accumulated in this way. He asked if his classmate had thought about them. He smiled bitterly and said that he had had enough of such thoughts lately. Hearing this, Kang Jin immediately remembered a couple of things about him. After a short silence, the boy replied that he was only thinking about what would be good for the younger ones. There are many adults who want to support him. He said that his father was among them. He thanked him for his sincerity, telling him to convey his gratitude to other adults. The street, as always, was busy and full of people. Tipsy guys shouted throughout the street. Other people walked around with joyful smiles. Girls looked out of the window, smiling at passers-by. At the entrance to the playing room, there was a guard with a huge physique. Everyone got involved in gambling. Some lost, some won. This is a natural thing there. Noticing a boy who clearly did not fit the age of this place, he began to drive him out of there. I didn't look carefully at the guy and told him to get out of here. The young man, with one movement, laid him down on his shoulder blades for disrespect. Standing next to the man who was now lying on the ground, he said who he even was to stretch his hands to him. Little by little, people from the street gathered near the commotion. So as not to disgrace himself even more, he began to rise. Not having learned his lesson, he again raised his hand to strike. Seeing that the boy was not at all afraid, he hesitated for a second. Seeing the frightening aura around the guy, he looked back. But there were too many people around. If he didn't do anything, his reputation would fall through the roof. He was about to strike. Suddenly, a larger man appeared from behind, hitting him on the back of the head. Stretching his neck, he shouted and asked who he was looking at so impudently. Bowing to the boy, he asked how he ended up here, to which he asked if he worked here. Mr. Nam replied that he personally does not run anything here, but as a guy who was brought here, this is not the place where the heir of the Lee family should go. Kang Jin said that he has one thing to do. He immediately became nervous, saying that if the owner found out, there would be problems. The boy said not to make a fuss out of nowhere. Kang Jin said that he was looking for one person. The subordinate asked who exactly. In response, the young man looked at him, frowning. Tae-won, as usual, got ready to go to school, the younger ones seeing him off and wishing him a good journey. Walking down the street, he saw a huge crowd of people, becoming interested. He came closer. He saw that tramp who seemed to be sitting near an improvised cross, with a sign around his neck that said that he was a robber. Noticing the state he was in, he thought, Didn't he talk about a cause and effect relationship? He knew what he would encounter. Knew, right? People saw the spectacle and began to disperse. Entering the classroom, he saw Kang Jin sitting quietly preparing for the lesson. The boy was clearly pleased with something. Sitting down at the next table, he asks why he is in such a good mood. He replied that due to the fact that he had dealt with something, he was in quite a good mood. Hearing this, Tae-won stared at him in surprise. Lee Ji-won was making some brush strokes on the canvas. He asked the subordinate whether he died in the end. The servant replied that no, but after this he would not be able to walk on one leg, but at least he would be able to move. The owner asked if he knew why Kang Jin was so obsessed with this bandit. He answered because that man beat his friend. The young man was furious then. Hearing the last sentence, Lee Ji-won froze without bringing his brush to the canvas. Still kneeling to the floor, he said that it was in order to condemn the guilty, if Teacher Kwok had calmed him down then. Without stopping, he continued his report. The head of the Lee family asked if this is why he devotes so much time to martial arts. But Kang Jin said not to interfere with this. Realizing that he had blurted out, he said that from now on he would closely monitor this. Lee Ji-won told him to keep up the good work. If they get into it unnecessarily, they won't achieve much results. While finishing his sentence, he said not to let him come here anymore, and to give him money to live on. He was angry and did not kill. This really surprised the head of the Lee family. He immediately remembered Kwok no, yet he is useful. So it can be controlled. Perhaps these are not just words. It was already night outside, and the moon was high in the sky. While drawing circles, Kwok. No thought, even if you learn quickly. This is how it should be. If so, then you can buy a little more time. He remembered the boy's appearance when he managed to jump over the tree. Praise comes out by itself. He cannot say that nothing is working out. Even if he says that he is no longer needed, how will he learn to be perfect? Sitting in his thoughts, he did not notice how the owner approached him from behind. Standing up instantly, he asked what brought him here at such a late hour. He asked why he was not sleeping. Kwok no replied that he was not feeling well. Lee Ji-won asked what he was drawing. He replied that he wanted to draw the gates, but he didn't really know how, so he was worried. While he was serving in the army, he accidentally heard about movements that were based on a change in disposition. He thinks it's too difficult to build on that. It seems to be based on Bagua. He has been trading all his life, so he does not know such things. But once on the altar in a Buddhist temple, he helped a fortune teller, and after listening a lot, he remembered some moments. Lee Ji-won asked if he was teaching this to Kang Jin. He immediately replied that the boy was not like that. He learned quickly and he wanted to teach him more interesting things. The head of the Lee family thanked him, saying that the guy was bringing him a lot of difficulties. Kwok no replied that there was nothing of the kind. He should thank him for his concern. Taking the stick in his hands, Lee Ji-won said that Kang Jin has changed a lot lately, all thanks to his teacher. Also, lately he often goes to the market. The child's father asked what he was doing there. Scratching his head, Kwok no said that he is teaching Kang Jin to read facial expressions in public. Finishing his unfinished gates, he asked again. He replied that yes, facial expressions. Kang Jin must learn to understand people's feelings by their faces. The facial expressions probably cause difficulties for him as a teacher. The guy is quite smart, so it's nothing like that. Teacher Kwok said that he knows his son. The boy will become as outstanding as his father. Lee Ji-won smiled as he asked if he was sure. Feeling something, he seemed to back down, saying that he will become an outstanding person. He himself wants this. Having finished drawing, he threw the stick on the ground. The head of the Lee family said that he himself did not have much, but he did not think that it would be suitable when it came to disposition. The teacher looked at the gate that the owner had completed, saying that now he understood everything, apologizing for taking up his time. He replied that it was not difficult. He said that he needed to go, and after saying goodbye, he went about his business. Crouching near the drawing on the ground, Kwok no thought, "This man is not as simple as he seems at first glance," the old man thought. While warming up to jump over the tree again, Kang Jin thought that it would be nice to exercise a little more. He still needs to train a lot. He learned most of the lessons. They are almost not difficult. The boy and his teacher were sitting in the tea shop again. The student looked displeasedly at the mentor, asking if he needed to learn all this again. To which he replied, "Why again? Wasn't it he who said that he had nothing more to learn?" Kwok, but said even if there is only one person here, wouldn't it be better to observe more? The young man replied that they were all the same. To which the teacher told him that most people tend to hide their intentions, but the expression on his face is impossible to hide. Thousands of commanders die on the battlefield. How was I able to survive there? It would be possible knowing all this, said the mentor. Kang Jin made a face, saying that he knew. Kwok no said that if he works and learns acting, He also said to practice expressing your emotions through facial expressions, like with Taewon. The guy said that he understood what he meant, but he sees all faces the same. The young man again stood in front of the tree. He's gotten better at it, but it's still too difficult. He's confident he'll get better if he digs into it. He jumped with all his might, increasing his speed in the air, and he landed unsuccessfully again, not having time to put his arms and legs out. Turning around, he asked the teacher if there was a more painless way. He replied that he should explain everything to him. The guy should understand himself how to get down. Kang Jin stood up, brushed himself off, and asked if the teacher himself knew. To which the master said that if he explained everything to him all the time, then there would be no progress. The boy was indignant, saying, "You don't teach me. When you rise on your left leg, cross your right leg so as not to fall. Anyone can say this. A bad head doesn't give rest to his hands. This is right about him. Only his teacher could call him stupid, because everyone else considers him a genius. The same means that he does not do very easy things and suffers because of this. All the skills that he uses when he gets up, he can also use when he attacks." The boy looked at him in bewilderment. Seeing the grimace he made, the mentor immediately said that it was with this face that he was trying to get up. Turning away, the young man said that it looked like he would have to be cunning this time too. Having rushed with all his might, he jumped onto a tree. Having successfully flown, he thought about how he would land. He kept thinking about how he could use this. Still using the same technique as when lifting, he landed quite successfully for the first time. Thus, being surprised and surprising the old man, who clearly did not expect this, he realized that he could use the same skills with which he climbed. The guy wanted to try again, only using his skills. He again jumped onto the tree with renewed vigor. Having applied the technique, he began to seem to walk down the steps. Seeing this, the old man was in complete shock. This crazy guy actually did it. The boy carefully descended, and for the first time it turned out so well. With joy in his voice, he asked the teacher if he had seen it. He confirmed this with a smile. The young man said that his mentor was truly a genius. He succeeded. The old man thought, maybe he has abilities that he doesn't know about. He's good at everything he teaches him. But if a guy teaches him anything, he has truly exceptional ability. And again it's night on the street, and Kwak No is again thinking about something while looking at his drawing. He thought that he remembered everything exactly, but it seems that something is missing here. He redrew, added to, tried different options, but everything was wrong. Gritting his teeth, he thought that he could not ask the owner to draw it again. Having thrown the twig, he thought that he had other things to do. Suddenly, Kang Jin's voice was heard from behind him, asking what it was. He got scared and told him to give at least some signs that he was here. The young man replied that he heard that he usually walks this way, and that the step from heel to toe is more stable. Therefore, they say that in this way energy can be preserved stably. Looking at the drawing again, he asked again what it was. He replied that it was not because of him. Kang Jin asked what he was worried about then. The old man replied that he was studying gates. He realized that the basic principle was based on Bagua. He began to talk in more detail about this thing. "So you took Bagua as a basis?" the guy asked, to which he answered in the affirmative. The boy walked towards one of the circles, pointing to one movement. He walked along each line as if checking for correctness. The young man said that if Bagua is the basis, then something is missing here. The movement is interrupted in the middle, and because of this, the balance is lost. Kwak No asked how he understood this. He replied that he studied Yijin at school, but it's not complete. It was said there that Taiji gives rise to Taijin Xuan, and Taijin Xuan gives rise to thought, Kang Jin began to say, finishing his gate. And then the thought gives rise to Bagua. Ultimately, it is energy that brings about change. Something like this, he said, having finished his edits, throwing the branch on the ground. Now he walked through each line with ease, saying that it was fascinating. Kang Jin said that he was a genius for thinking of using this scheme in this way. Kwak No replied that he was still studying, saying that the boy seemed to have already figured out the basics and did not need to be told about them. The boy said that these were just the basics, and it would be better if he learned more interesting things, agreeing that he would teach them to him when he finished. The teacher says that he cannot follow him always, to which he replied that he would simply suffer longer. He again began to show something in the drawing, saying that you should not step there, and if you step there, it could develop into a hexagram. It seems that you can't make it too precise. You might end up not knowing how. The old man looked at him and didn't understand what he was talking about. No matter how hard he tried, he still couldn't understand what he was talking about. But no, let him speak to his health. If he realizes that the mentor himself does not understand anything, then this can lead to a bad end. Sitting down, he scratched his head, mentally saying that now he would not be able to teach him this. The young man smiled, looking at his efforts. Academician Chan once again sorted out the sheets from his class's exams. He called Kang Jin by his full name, and he immediately stood up from his seat. He said that he and Taewon tied for first place in the exam this time. Usually Taewon occupies it, but Kang Jin performs excellently. Pulling his beard, he realized that it certainly didn't seem to him that the boy had really succeeded. Others looked at him with envy. This is it. This is what he tried for. Kangjin was shaking with joy. He barely restrained himself from screaming. Already sitting at home on the steps, he boasted to the teacher about his successes. He loves attention to such an extent that he has hope. The greed that dictates that he gets more and more attention can suppress his cruelty. He asked the student how pleasant it was. He replied that he needed to see it. Everyone immediately respected him. He had a feeling near his stomach. He doesn't even know how to describe it. The old man came to the conclusion that he liked it. To which the young man said, of course. Kwak No says he is happy. It turns out his plate is also deep. He asked what this meant, to which the teacher replies that there is such a saying. He said that let's take care of the teacher who doesn't want to ruin all the fun for his student. To be frank, the effect is decreasing. When he is nervous, it is not clear how, but he must cope with the anxiety in his soul. And so on for a long time. It's good that everything is fine, but shouldn't he continue his studies? He said to wait for him a little. He would wash himself and come. They were already sitting at the table opposite each other. Kwak No depicted joy on his face, smiling. Kangjin immediately said that it was fake. The old man asked if he was sure of this, to which he replied that exactly. After hesitating a little, he said that he doesn't know. A smile is like a smile. He was about to ask what distinguishes them, when the mentor put his hands on his cheeks, thereby forcing him to look at him. The teacher said to look. He also said that people do not show everything that is inside them, so he must guess about it himself. Not only do the lips move, the power is reflected in the eyes. Then the boy replied that it was fake. When one smiles sincerely, the upper part of the cheeks above the mouth usually move first, followed by the lips. Listening to this, the young man replied that it all looked the same anyway. He should concentrate his attention not only on the cheeks and lips, the joy in the eyes is exactly the same. You need to look at the whole face. That's why he couldn't tell the difference. The faster he gets used to it, the better he will remember. But why is it so slow for him? Maybe he caught some kind of disease that does not allow him to understand people. What nonsense. Such a thing does not exist. For many it took less time. He has doubts about this. The old man said to try again, and if it doesn't work, he will come up with another way. He made such a grimace that you couldn't immediately understand what was wrong with him. Kangjin began to list what he noticed, lips moving together and cheeks partially moving. Standing up, he stroked the boy, saying that he was gradually beginning to understand, but they need to train his insight separately. Kangjin said that he can see well, to which he replied that this is a lie. If you practice a little, in addition to leaves, he will also see ants. Having good vision and being able to use your eyes are completely different things. Vision is an innate human sense. The problem is that there is a big misconception about what you see and what really is. The boy asked what misconception he was talking about. They began to light a fire from dry grass and branches. Seeing that the teacher threw something additional into the fire, he asked what it was. The old man asked him to wait a little. Not even a minute passed before the fire went out. Kwak No asked him if he could take the stone, to which the guy looked at him indignantly, saying how he would take it if he was hot. He asked how he knew that the stone was hot. Turning away, he said the most logical thought in his opinion because the stone was on fire. Suddenly he realized something, freezing for a second. If he had not watched the process, he would have simply taken that stone without hesitation. But suddenly the stone somehow cools down, and he won't believe it. Why? Because he saw the stone lying on fire. Kwak No easily took the stone in his hands, throwing it from one to the other. It's hot, but not to the point where you can't take it. This is a delusion that he saw with his own eyes. Kangjin asked, he means that if he trains, he can convince himself that the stone is not that hot. He replied that to some extent, yes. As long as a person is alive, he can look until he touches the truth. The old man said that this was not all, suddenly raising his fist, but stopped it in time right in front of the boy's face. He stumbled back, almost losing his balance. Kwak No asked what he was doing, to which the young man replied that he wanted to hit him, but he didn't hit, even though he was going to. He replied that although he raised his hand to strike, he did not even have the thought of striking. He threw away the stone, telling the guy not to make hasty conclusions. This is also an illusion. He had deluded himself again. Kangjin asked how to find out whether the enemy will hit or not. As if he understood something, the boy said that he would know it if he trained more. The old man supported him in this, telling him to try. Kwak but told him to relax, and he would have time to understand in time whether he would hit or just pretend, and could easily dodge the fist. The guy replied, "This is interesting." The teacher now told him to try. The young man took a fighting stance. Sharply raising his hand to strike, he stopped his fist just a centimeter from the mentor's palm. The boy said that he would try again. He struck as the old man sharply raised his arm bent to the elbow. Now he really succeeded. When Kwak No was a soldier, the only way to survive there was through talent. Kang Jin asked what if the teacher was hiding something from him. He answered, that's why he should train emotional intelligence. To learn to read not only natural emotions, but also fake ones. Since he's already an old man, it looks like he is imitating. The young man asked what exactly. Suddenly, the aura around Kwak No became heavy and frightening, and his eyes began to glow with a previously unknown power. Frightened, the boy fell, losing his balance. The terrifying aura both appeared and disappeared, and the old man stood in front of him again, smiling. Still not completely over the shock, he asked what it was, to which the teacher replied that this can be called human energy. Helping the guy get up, he asked not to be afraid of him. Yet he had been wandering around the battlefield for decades. The old man asked if he always doubts in such situations. Kwak No asked if the reason he does all this is worth it. He answered yes. It was already deep after midnight, the lights went out in all the houses. The boy says that today was much more fun than training alone, continuing to say that it would be nice if the next training was also joint. The mentor said that he understood by agreeing to this, but said that they could not solve his internal problems together. Kang Jin says he will think about it. In response, the teacher thanks him for the fact that the young man treats him better than he deserves. While they were talking, the moon was already far in the sky. They were both asleep, lying in bed. Nothing foreshadowed trouble. The boys' pets were having fun, running around the yard, not noticing the snake that had crept up and was watching them. Having noticed something, the squirrel became alarmed and began to look around for signs of danger. Finally seeing the snake approaching, he hissed and his fur stood on end. The snake, noticing this, climbed back but ran into a man who, having arrived, stood there. Grabbing the snake by the neck near the head, Kang Jin looked at it menacingly and perplexedly at the same time. While the boy was dealing with the creeping creature, his pets quietly left the scene. The boy and the teacher were again sitting in this tea house, watching people from the street, and apparently one of them was sleeping. Waking up, the old man asked the young man if he was watching. He replied that he trains more by ear because he hears them. Over there, that seller who sells fabrics says that he will give a discount of 20 coins, but the customer insists on a discount of 40 coins. And over there are two women discussing their husbands. Well, a trickster is a trickster in Africa. It's useful anyway, isn't it? The guy says he thinks he's too special. He asks what he is doing. Does he really want to do something different from what others are doing again? The boy says maybe he really is a monster. The teacher said that he is not a monster. He just has characteristics that others do not have. Plus, he has his mentor. If the young man really was a monster, he wouldn't be around. Something might have happened to the boy. The old man asked what was wrong with him. Kwak No says that perhaps the guy misunderstood him, saying that from now on they will begin to tell each other only the truth. He asked if he had been avoided at school again. The young man immediately replied that no. He asked if it was because of the old teacher that he was like this. He replied that no. Academician Chan praises him moderately. Not like Taewon, of course, but still. My father began to give me more pocket money and ask about everything. The mentor said that the boy kept everything he promised the teacher, and a lot of things had changed. Isn't this what the young man wanted? He replied that yes, but sometimes he feels strange. Kang Jin has definitely achieved everything he wanted, but now he doesn't want to do anything alone. Hearing what his student said, Kwak No froze for a second. Unexpectedly for the guy himself, he stroked him on the head, ruining his hairstyle. The old man tells him that he has a teacher, asking if he knew something that he does not know. The boy smiled happily and asked if he knew. Kwak No replied that, of course. Did he really think that the mentor didn't even know about it? All mentors know about this, and why is he so careless? He hadn't relaxed this much in a long time. So silly. Well, it has become better compared to the past. He asked if the guy felt as if he was flying in the sky and waving a stick. Kang Jin replied that it was definitely better, but it was also sudden. With joy on his face, the young man said that really, teacher. He replied that yes, as long as a teacher like him is next to him, the boy will be special whenever he wants. And again, it was deep after midnight. Normal people had been sleeping for a long time. And Kwak, but still walks and thinks about what he should do. They have reached the limit because the guy is already accustomed to using his body, and thank God that he began to focus attention on himself. But the problem is that it doesn't work as it should. However, he must try. What else can he do? They stood in the forest again. The young man asks what it is, looking at the table on which the dishes are standing. He replies that these are jugs for destruction. Won't he feel better when he breaks a few pieces? Looking cynically at the mentor, he said that if he breaks them, then his actions will be different from the actions of other people, unless he stops thinking about it. He asked if Kwak No really did all this. If you swing a stick, you can knock down several trees. He still seems uncomfortable. Taking the plate in his hands, the guy answered something like that. The boy says he is fine. Thanks to the teacher, he understood how to behave so that people would not think he was strange. Quack. But very careless, this young man counts on him so much, and all he does is drink and eat all day long. Turning to the guy, he said not to admit it until he can't come up with anything better than what we have now. But he will definitely come up with something, so he asked me to promise him one thing. The old man said not to lie and not to hide anything from anyone, which is what he's actually doing now. Kang Jin says that he would never go back to that time before he met his teacher. He said not to even think about it. He himself did not expect something like this to happen. The guy says he knows this, but he would still find some way to find him. He threw the plate, and it broke into small pieces on the tree. The mentor, looking at his throw, said that most likely it would have been so. Kwak No was sitting under a tree, bandaging a wound on his hand, and swords were lying around everywhere. As he was doing this, a warrior approached him, asking him to say something. He approached him, helping to bandage the wound. Kwak No asked why he was smiling. He replied that it is better to smile than to cry. Kwak No said that when he says this, he becomes scared. Is he really having fun? With a terrifying smile on his lips, he asked, "Is it so noticeable?" His interlocutor replied that yes. He confirmed this, and besides, he is the only person who can say this in front of him. Kwak said that he was curious about one detail. Looking at his friend, he asked whether there really are no things in the world that are worth fearing. Well, if that strange man had experienced a similar feeling, wouldn't he have become completely different? Returning from the memories, Kwak No thought. Already sitting at the table, he thought about what that man said then. He said he could be completely different. If he felt fear, he would become completely different. But what is the boy afraid of? He seems afraid to show his face to his father, but he definitely wants to get his attention, and he has no difficulties at school. He might have thought that he was afraid of Kwak No, but he should not be afraid. Walking around the room, he kept thinking about what Kang Jin should be afraid of. He thought about asking the owner for help. Also bypass. It can have the opposite effect. There are things that the guy wants to hide from him, and if he talks to the master, he will reveal it. Although maybe he won't even believe it. Quack. But the only connection between this guy and his communication with the world. So no matter what happens, he should not betray him. Having come up with something again, he thought that it might work. And night came again, and Kwak No lit a fire and stood near it, apparently planning to spend the night there. Looking at the mountain, he thought that this time he was alone. Whether he was very tired, he needed to try to climb. But he just came down. No matter how much he wants to, he must do it. The clouds were thickening, covering the moon, while Kang Jin walked carelessly through the cemetery. He simply walked, not paying attention to the whistle of the wind, purposefully heading somewhere. Hearing something, he turned around and saw only 2 deer in the darkness. Yawning, he walked further, looking around. He doesn't do gymnastics on a moonlit night. Then why is he here? Having given up on everything, he lay down with a sigh on a nearby bush. And the moon was still high in the sky. Kwak No was already holding his head with both hands out of despair, remembering that night. Yawning, the boy said, "Who are they afraid of here? There is nothing dangerous here." He asked the teacher if he had seen anything. Waving his head, Kwak No thought that the guy should not go through this. He is sure that the young man simply misunderstands emotions. It shouldn't be that way. We need a visible and obvious result. Suddenly, some thought came to his mind. It's the same with that guy. He didn't do it because he knew how it would end. He didn't have to do something like that. Only that fragment needs to be focused on. He quickly walked out of his chambers. He met a butler whose name was Cheon Guan. He asked what he was doing here. Kwak No said that he had something important to do with the master, asking if he could pass. He replied that there is no problem, only the butler must inform him in advance, so he can come for a visit at any time. The old man thanked him and left. Kang Jin and the teacher stood near the fence to which they tied a screaming bull. He asked him what they were doing here, to which the mentor replied that he wanted to see how cattle were slaughtered correctly. The boy asked if he could try. He responded by asking if he was interested, to which the young man replied that that was why they took him with them. Kwak No turned away and looked beyond the fence, waiting for the start. The animal cried and made plaintive sounds while the butcher was preparing everything necessary. Seeing what he wanted, Kwak No left with the student. He asked the guy what he was thinking about when he watched the bull being slaughtered. He replied that it was nothing, saying that he was pleasantly surprised by the skill of that gentleman. In one breath, he caught and killed the bull. Hearing what the boy answered, he told him to stop praising that man, saying that usually his peers, before praising the skill of butchers, spare the bull. But when they eat the meat of an ox, they don't feel sorry for it. If that's the case, then first they need to give up its meat. Kang Jin is right, but ordinary children think differently. The young man asked if the teacher wanted him to think like others. The old man shook his head and said that no. Everyone has a different way of thinking. He just wants the guy to remember what those people said before the slaughter of the bull. The butcher then, putting his hand on the bull's head, told him to live his next life better. And he better know why those guys undergo training before slaughtering an animal. The guy says that he knows this. In order to kill them without blinking an eye, you need to have a rod inside. However, people first imagine what is happening. Having understood something, Kang Jin says that one can even imagine such a thing. Kwak No replied that almost, but he still wants the guy to explain to him why they are killing the bull. To which the boy replies that they are going to eat him. The teacher says that this is the correct answer and that this is also the reason why they kill the bull. The master says that when he was in the army, he killed people. The reason for this was survival. On the battlefield, there is one rule. It's either you or you. That's why it's called a battlefield. At least, even if it kills a mosquito, it is only because it sucks its blood, and not because it is annoying. For example, if a mosquito and a moth are flying nearby, it will not kill only the mosquito, because the moth irritates it to the same extent. Sighing, the young man says that he is taking too long. In order to kill you need a reason. And the reason he started this conversation with him was to convey to the guy that when he killed the hare, he had no reason for it. Kang Jin understands this old man well. But the boy also has a reason why he's like this and why he behaves this way. Kwak No came into holy horror when he saw this. Kang Jin seemed not to be himself. He began to talk about how you can achieve something on your own, do something unimaginable at will, feel like a god at such moments. While he was imagining something, the mentor hit him on the back, saying that he saw it as a mosquito, so he killed it. So this is the reason. The young man asked the teacher if he had never thought like that. To which he replied that he was busy with his survival. There was no time to think. The guy asked if this was a strange reason. He replied that it was quite the opposite, that she was special. The old man says that when he smells blood, he immediately remembers the past, which spoils his mood. Kang Jin almost caught him. Even if no one understands, he should not react to this boy with such an expression. True, this is the moment he was so afraid of. He tells the young man that he understood his reason, but others are unlikely to understand him. The guy knows this, which is why he keeps his distance from others. The old man asked if he continues to do this even now, to which he replies that thanks to him, now it's not. This is the result of his efforts. The boy did not give up to get what he wants. The problem is choice. Will he enjoy the gifts he receives when he becomes a ruler, or will he live and be content with little as others want? It's just his choice. When the time comes to feel the time, let him think about what he really wants. This is all he should do. Kang Jin agreed with him, saying that he was right. He thought about continuing his thought. How Kwak but interrupted him, saying that it was hard to stand until the end, and that someday they would return here. But for now, let him think. He told the young man to choose one thing. Either your reason for killing animals, or the reason for ordinary people. The guy says he understands, and the teacher is still worried about him. Did he understand exactly? Well, he's smart, he should understand. No matter what he chooses, he can trust old man Kwak. Suddenly, Kang Jin asked about that strange man that the mentor sometimes talked to. Has he killed people before? A little nervous, he replied that anything could happen. That man has no mind. But to make your wish come true, do you really need to go to the battlefield? If you just kill a person, you will be punished. But if you kill him on the battlefield, you may be rewarded. The boy said that when he listened to the teacher, something became clearer in his head. He says that he understood everything, although people used to call him a merciless puppy. But now everything is different. Kwak No said that this was the result of the guy's actions, adding that he should not forget about it. And again in the morning the boy practices with a wooden sword, making every movement with elegance. Continuing the training, he did something wrong, which caused him to stumble. The young man paused in slight confusion, realizing that he had made the movement incorrectly. He tried it a second time, only differently than the last time. Out of breath, he stopped. This is what his mentor showed him, but something haunts him. The guy walked up to the table on which his things lay, putting down his sword. He opened the very book that he took as a teacher. There was almost no writing in it except for 4 words. Even a picture book has more words, and the movements shown are not even related to each other. In principle, the book is not so useless if there is something to strive for, of course. While Kang Jin was thinking out loud, Kwak No came up to him, saying that he was early today. Seeing his book in the boy's hands, he was horrified. He abruptly took it away from Kang Jin, saying that it was not for him. He says with a grin that he can no longer hide it, because everything he has been teaching him lately is in that book. The old man tries to justify himself by saying that he read it only for reference. Grinning, the guy says that he would hardly have read it to reassure himself, asking where he bought it. Maybe he was deceived. Kwak No is indignant, saying that he is not that stupid. He agrees with him, but says that the movements in the book do not match, asking if he knows. Justifying himself, the teacher said that this was just an addition, saying that he needed to start training as soon as possible, because he still had to go to school. Now under the supervision of a mentor, he began to hone the movements from the book. Smiling, Kwak No thinks that it is great that he has such a student. He already feels the weight of his training. Turning around, he scratched his head. Had he really been fooled? Having finished training, the young man got ready for school. Tae-won was reading the material before class as usual, when he heard something and turned his head to the side. He noticed Kang-jin, who was working out some movements, but standing up unevenly, his leg gave way. The boy looked around, no matter who noticed his joint. The young man approached Tae-won, placing on his table the book he had studied from in the morning. He told the guy to look at the book. He replied that he did not understand the use of a sword, and in principle was not good at using it. Kang-jin asked him to help figure out something. He is now trying to do something similar to what is drawn. It seems that 8 trigrams were shown that time, but is it possible to move by walking along that circle? He tried it, and it seems that it is possible, but the movements seem strained, and the pose is unnatural. Tae-won says that if he stood firm on his feet, even though everything is wrong at the top, he would still be able to catch his balance. Kang-jin suggested training together at Tae-won's house, to which he asks how much free time he has. He looked doubtfully at the boy opposite, saying that he should read books, but in the end, they still train together at Tae-won's house. It seems that his classmate is no longer able to. His legs are already shaking. Looking at how he sat down on the ground, Kang-jin calmly said that they only did it 3 times. If he wants to make the pose more natural, then a couple of days will not be enough. It seems that they need to study the Yi Jin Jing better. Tae-won says that he only studied it in theory. This is his first time trying to train. Still, taking pity on his friend, Kang-jin said that that's enough for today. Moreover, the exam is coming soon. Sitting down next to a classmate, he asked him if he was confident in his knowledge. To which he replied that he had no idea, asking them to hand it over together. Kang-jin agreed with him, saying that they were renting out guanxi. And yet how can it be that Tae-won studies all day long and cannot even get guanxi? He will soon surrender to the hanshi. He says that it happened so, asking what about him, if he is getting ready. Although the teacher expects him to pass next, Kang-jin sees no reason to take the last exam. Hearing Tae-won's sigh, he turned to him, asking him if he had blurted out something wrong again. But he says that the boy is right. He has no other choice but to make a career and become famous. Kang-jin asked if it were someone else in his place. He would be upset. The guy replied that everyone is different, so it's possible. Tae-won says that despite the fact that we are all different, there is something like shame, envy, a feeling of inferiority, maybe because of this. While they were talking, Tae-won's sister called them, saying that the food was ready. Having sat around the table, they began to eat, when suddenly Tae-won's youngest said, "It's good that they communicate every day." Having understood what the younger one was talking about, he said to repeat these words to his brother. They immediately turned around and looked at their brother with doubt. And really, why does he come there so often? It seems it has already become a habit. Every time he goes there, he doesn't like that awful dinner table. He's stubborn. He sees that he's staring at a piece of meat. They say that people should have a sense of proportion. Watching the baby happily gobble it up, Kang-jin thinks that she weighs the same as him. Thinking about their own things, they did not notice that the sister was telling something. Only when he called him did they turn their attention to her. She says that a gang of robbers is operating in the area, and they say that the village of Unhwa has already been robbed. Tae-won asked if the village was not 30 miles away. Yes, but at least 10 robbers ride on horses. Now the head of their village is gathering people and calling on them to go on duty. One person must also go from their house. The boy wondered what they should do. At the same time, Kang-jin says that this is all useless. After all, while on duty, they will not be able to do anything. They will not even be able to detain the robbers. In addition, it takes about 1 hour to run from there to Kwan. It will all be useless against them on horseback. He asked how many there were. The girl replied that there are a lot of them. Well, was it ever possible for an ordinary farmer to beat such cruel people? You simply cannot tolerate their raids. It would be better to collect money and hire soldiers. If something had gone wrong, the village head would have already told us. He can ask for mercenaries, but then he will need to pay them 1 piece of silver every 3 days. It's not that expensive considering his life is on the line. But nothing can be done. Tae-won still has to go. But there is nothing to steal from their villages. Kang-jin tells him to just not do it. But the guy resists and says that it's not so simple. This is the problem of his village. He must help people, given that the residents of this village have repeatedly helped them. It dawned on Kang-jin, and he decided to switch places with them. Then he shouts to his classmate to pay instead of going. He's telling the truth, especially since Tae-won is about to take an exam. And instead of preparing, he will be on duty at night. The guy turns away, saying that this is his problem. And in this regard, he is really inferior to Kang-jin. He knows that he wants to repay people for their help. But when he becomes an official, he will be able to repay. Does he tell him to choose what is better, stand and shake on duty or accept his help, pass the exam and pay people back later? Sighing, he said that he would accept his help this time. Kang Jin gave him a bag of money, saying that if it wasn't enough, he would bring more. Tae-wan says that this is enough and that he will definitely return the money. The boy told him not to worry. Even if he didn't pay him back, he wouldn't be poor. When Kang Jin returned home, it was already well after midnight and the moon was already far in the sky. He remembered his friend when he urged him to go home faster because it was already quite late. Who else is worried about whom here? Now he has a chance and time to practice his gait, so he carefully began to imitate it. Noticing something, he focused on the sound from the bushes. The robbers sat there talking among themselves. One said that he was still a child. The second didn't care. He just looked at his clothes and said that he was rich. Well, they're clearly going to rob him, the young man thought skeptically. Now they are talking to him in silence. You need to either speak more quietly or grab him first and then chat. And these are those robbers. Nevertheless, having decided, they lined up in a group in front of him, blocking the road. Looking at them, Kang Jin just wanted to laugh at how stupid they looked. They froze when they heard the boy laugh. They understood the reason for this. The young man asked who they were. They responded by asking if he was alone and where his parents were. They communicate like little children who are coming from the market and have forgotten the way home. Kang Jin decided to play off the confused child, saying that he was going home from a friend, and he himself lived in the county. And they did the stupidest thing that could be done. They asked if he had money with him, to which the guy replied that he didn't have it with him, but if they let him go, then tomorrow he'll definitely bring it. They began to talk among themselves. One asked what to do. The second one replies that it's okay, he needs to be let go, especially since his parents will worry. The third of their small group asked if they would really let him go. They said that they would let him go for today, but tomorrow evening he must definitely bring them money. And what kind of robbers do this anyway? They didn't even have to start their activities. The guy was going to beat them to practice everything he had learned. He asked them what would happen if he failed to bring money tomorrow. They answer him that if he does not keep his promise, then he will have big problems. Still pretending to be a frightened boy, he asked if he could go. They said yes, go parting and letting the boy through. Kang Jin suddenly noticed a movement from one of the robbers with his peripheral vision, and was already turning towards them to strike. When the same robber told him to walk more carefully, it was dark. Having warned him, they calmly left, not thinking about anything. The young man stared after them. Are they seriously coming there tomorrow? Does this even happen? Sitting on the training field in the lotus position, Kang Jin trained his millet. When he woke up from his trance and raised his head, he saw his father in front of him. Greatly surprised by this, Lee Ji-won asked him what he was doing, to which he replied that he was studying the breathing technique that the teacher showed him. The head of the Lee family wondered how he taught him if he himself does not have such skills, and isn't it used to strengthen the body in Taekwondo? Kang Jin kept saying at the time that he used to think it was some kind of nonsense, but he continued to train. And then he saw his progress. Although at first the teacher constantly said something about the Qi core, and then in the Dantian, he felt something the size of a grain, and now it is the size of a fist. Doesn't this mean that he is doing everything right? It turns out this old man is not completely useless. Lee Ji-won asked his son if he could release this energy already. He happily confirmed this, telling him to look carefully. The boy concentrated, filling his hands with his energy. He concentrated and released a small gust of wind, under the supervision of his father. The guy can't do everything yet, but if there is wind, it blows from far away. Looking at his son, he asked what else he had learned. The head of the Lee family suspected that something was wrong. Perhaps his son had simply exceeded his expectations. Although he was told that he could already cope with an experienced warrior, he was clearly already at a higher level. But it is useful for him to know more, because then he will be able to protect himself. The fact that he has already reached this level proves that he is studying hard. While Lee Ji-won was thinking, Kang Jin had already finished demonstrating his skills by going down to him. The boy approached his father, asking how it happened, to which he replied that it was good that he was training his body, but he would like to see more of his achievements in his studies. The young man agreed with him, saying that he would no longer neglect his studies. This answer completely satisfied his father. The guy thought that he would praise him, but no. Well, maybe he at least enjoyed watching him. Well, accordingly, he needs to study, he needs to prepare for Guanxi. It was already evening. Kang Jin was waiting for the robbers in that very place near the tree. The guy thought that it would be good if they didn't waste time. It's not rubber. Hearing footsteps behind him, he rejoiced at their imminent arrival. Apparently, the most important one from the group told his people that the boy had really come. The second one said that children don't know how to lie. They slowly approached him, putting their weapons in front of them. The main one told the young man to give them the money. He gave them away without resisting. He happily took the bag of money and began pouring it into his hand. Their jaws dropped at what they saw. He gave them 3 bars of silver. They said that a few coins would be enough for them. Looking at the boy in shock, the robbers asked where he got them. Kang Jin irritably told them to take the money and, as promised, to let him go. They began to talk among themselves, saying that only 30 coins were needed. Now they have to do something about it. The guy has already brought enough. How can they ask for more? The elder made a grimace, almost crying. He sincerely asked for forgiveness, saying that they were robbing him in order to survive, so they should take him with them. In all the time of their robber life, no one brought more money than him. What he heard left Kang Jin confused. Taking him with them, they led him to their village. Looking around, the guy was shocked. Do people live in such a place? The leader of the group said that if those guys had a head on their shoulders, they would not have touched him. His father must pay the ransom. Following them, the young man held his hands behind his back, asking himself why he was even here. They took him into the hut, saying that he would be there, and giving him some food in the form of 2 corn, and left. When they left, the boy sat down on a bench that stood near the table. Left alone, he began to examine himself for the presence of bedbugs and other insects. But he thinks it will be fun since he was kidnapped. Although if they had kidnapped him, they would have tied his hands and kept watch under the house. Well, they told him to just wait. So the guy went out into the yard. Coming out, he saw 3 children watching him through a mini fence. He called them to him, and they got goosebumps when they realized that they had been noticed. Taking the cob, he asked the kids if they would eat it. The children joyfully ran up to him, taking food. No matter how you look at it, it doesn't look like a place where thieves live, they're just local poor people. Seeing that they were already choking, he told them to eat more slowly, simultaneously asking how long they had not eaten. One answered that from lunch the day before yesterday, the second that from yesterday morning, and the third from last night. To which Kang Jin said that when he arrived, it seemed to him that the field was well looked after. How come they don't have food? But they say that everything is wrong. It's all because of the blacks. Hearing the name, the boy became wary. These are the most famous robbers in the area. They are ruthless. Even the local authorities cannot do anything. This gang comes and takes their food. They also took Hwanggu. This is the bull that was in their village. When they took him, it was hard for everyone in the village. Even the adults cried. And it seems that in this village, this bull was the only source of food. While Kang Jin was in his thoughts, the children began to cry and stutter. He told them in an orderly tone not to cry, asking where all the adults were. Everyone gathered around the fire. But the guy says that if they apologize, nothing will change. He looked at them as if they were the stupidest creatures in the world, saying that if they had firmly made up their minds, they should treat the hostage correctly. The young man asked what they finally decided. They replied that after they received the ransom, they would release him. But they don't know how rich he is. He replied that he lived very well. He asked how much they wanted for him. They said that they demanded 30 silver coins. Hearing the sum, Kang Jin was indignant. Why do they need so little? Are they afraid of these blacks? The leader of the group, looking away, said, "They are not just mountain robbers. This is a group of robbers who travel on horses. They are very ruthless and cruel. If you don't give them what they want, they will kill everyone." The guy immediately remembered how Taewon's sister talked about this at dinner. He thought with slight indifference. So they are those robbers. The young man asked them how they were going to receive the ransom. They replied that one of them would go to his house and demand a ransom. This is useless. Do they think that they will just be given money? What a stupid idea. They will instantly have their heads taken off their shoulders without mercy. Some became nervous, saying that they were afraid of the local feudal lords, which is why they came so far. If they are caught and find out that they are hiding from taxes, they will all be killed. Kang Jin confidently says that there will be no one left here who would receive money from his parents. If they do this, they will cut off their heads and take it to his father. Then one of the thieves asked what they should do. In response to this, he says that there is no need to tell anyone. You need to prepare and go ahead. You need to act tough. The guy thought about it when he saw that he was not behaving as usual. They are kidnappers. There is no need to help them. Everyone languidly waited for what he would say next. The young man thought that this could work, and then they would all consider him their savior. They will respect him for the rest of their lives. From this thought, a smile appeared on Kang Jin's face by itself. Lee Ji-won was in the chambers. He stood and looked at a portrait of some girl. The butler at that moment was telling him a report about what he had learned about Kwak No. He was an ordinary soldier. But then the commander-in-chief of the army was Chong Man. This changes everything. He asked him again, calling the name again. The servant confirmed it again. The head of the Lee family asks what the connection is. The servant says that there were rumors that Commander John valued his soldiers very much, and sometimes taught them martial arts. But these were not just rumors, as he trained them in front of everyone. Lee Ji-won says that this is not the same level. He also tested Guan Nora's skills, so how did he teach Kang Jin something that he himself can't do? The owner said that no one in this house knows martial arts except himself and the servant. He asked him if he taught the boy. He replied that he would not dare. Then only Hyana remains, but does Kang Jin know about his existence? He couldn't improve his skills that much on his own. The butler says that he heard that teacher Guan went around the village and bought martial arts textbooks. It was possible that the young master's skills were taken from textbooks. And he wants to say that skills from the books of some unknown authors can raise the level like that? Who is he lying to? Li Jiwan ordered to check everything that Master Guan kept. He can't let this go unnoticed. Watching the servant leave, the head of the Li family realized that the old man should not be underestimated. And most of it was completed by Li Jiwan, wasn't it? Apparently, Kang Jin really started learning martial arts. Once upon a time, he also took part in hostilities. Looking at the portrait of his wife, he only thought that he was very worried about his son. Meanwhile, Guan Nora stood leaning on a wooden sword and read a book. While studying the textbook, he realized something. Even if it is indeed true, it still looks funny. Putting the book on the floor, he stood up, although his legs were no longer so strong, and his back should be straight. If he had come across a skilled warrior, he would have died on the spot. And it seems that first he needs to think about how to change the lower part. Gathering his strength into a fist, he again took a fighting stance. And as was shown in the textbook, he swung his sword. Having filled his body with energy, he stopped. I think it will do just fine. And again laziness took over, and Mentor Guan thought that when he had time, he would practice some more. Rubbing his lower back, he climbed into bed. God, he's too old to train. He lounged in the starfish position and began to think. This is an important technique, and it looks pretty cool. I'll have to teach the kid how to do it. Night with the moon returned to the sky again, and the robber villages were noisy as always after Kang Jin appeared. The boy asked them a question. If you give the bandits money, they will simply leave. The head answered with doubt that they simply had to give the money. Perhaps they will continue to be bullied after this. The young man said that he was not talking about this money. He asks them what they will do if they come again and demand money. The guy looked at them skeptically, asking if they would take him hostage again. He sighed dejectedly, asking why they didn't go to the main palace. To which he replies that most of the farmers who are hiding from taxes have gathered here, so they can't go there. They had no choice but to kidnap the boy, to which he answers them that they cannot hold him hostage forever, asking when they will arrive. They answer that it's already tomorrow. Kang Jin thinks where to start. It is impossible for his father to find out. Usually he takes the initiative when it comes to mercy, but in this situation, the young man is not sure that he will not cut off their heads. The problem is that you can't tell anyone about this, and the teacher will soon find him. He asked to bring him coal and a board, but remembered that they did not know writing. The guy called the man who was quickly running towards him. Moving a little away from everyone, they began to whisper about something. The same one ran to teacher Guan and gave him something. He asked if his student really said this, to which the poor man nodded, confirming it. The old man wondered why this boy would do this. Guan Nora told the tramp to wait a little. He will get ready and go out. Kang Jin had already been warming up since the morning. It looks like he never fell asleep at night. Can this be called compassion? Well, in any case, Mentor Guan will like it, and will see it through to the end. Nobody will die. He was stretching his hands when he suddenly heard someone shouting to him that they had arrived. It's a bit early. The head of the village was worried because they had not yet received the ransom. To which the young man looked at him in bewilderment. Seeing this, the man asked why Chun went to his house then. Kang Jin answered him that he was not running for a ransom, but for one person. Hearing this, the village head became even more nervous, because the robbers had already arrived. The guy thought, although there is no time, he needs to wait a little longer. He told them to go, but the man hesitantly repeated that he needed money. He was surprised when he saw that the boy pulled out another bag, but this time it was smaller. Well, if you're going to rob, you need to be able to search properly. The young man asked if he wanted anything else. Turning his back to him, and throwing the bag in his hand, he told him to go. The robber was sitting on a box, and two more stood on his sides. He whistled when he saw the amount they collected. In my thoughts, I wonder where they got it all. He turned his head, looking at the head of the poor. There is nothing here. The robber also said that he would bring his guys. He looked at the money greedily, thinking that since everything was so good here, he wanted it all alone. The head of the village, nevertheless finding courage, asked him about the safety of his village. He grinned and replied that now the Iron Blood Gang will be able to ensure the safety of his village. The man bowed and thanked him. But he, apparently cunning, said that he would provide security for only 1 month. The head of the village looked at him in confusion, asking what he was talking about. He said that they might not even hope to get rid of him the first time, having agreed that if they want protection, then let them pay every month. Residents say that they have no more money, to which the robber said that he did not care. The robber, smiling greedily, thinks that since they were able to pay the first time, that means they can do the second. The alarmed villagers asked how he could talk like that. They started shouting that it was impossible. The man began to smile even stronger, thinking that if they left quietly, they would not feel afraid. And if they don't feel fear, then they won't do anything. Some need to be kicked in the ass. Rubbing his beard, he asked, as if nothing had happened, what they were talking about. The same ones no longer answer so confidently that they say that they do not have that kind of money. The village resident was about to continue when, out of the blue, a fist flew into his face. When he fell to the ground, two of that robber's underguards began to kick him, saying that such non-entities do not value life at all. Covering his face from blows, he shouted and asked for help. Looking at his suffering, the chief of the robbers smiled, asking the others if there was anyone among them who was tired of living. All the remaining inhabitants leaned away warily, trembling with fear. No one dared to say anything in response, when suddenly the man heard from the side that he was called a name. He turned around to see who was so brave there. Kang Jin stood with a calm face, saying that if the name is such a pretentious one, then why don't they live up to it? The robber apparently thought that in front of him was an ordinary child and relaxed. The young man calmly asks him why they continue to beat people if they have already taken the money. He asks them if they already got what they wanted, then what's the problem? Is this not enough for them or something? To which the robber says with a smile, it looks like it was that kid's money. The guy crossed his arms and asked what he wanted. The man turned around, looking at the villagers, and said mockingly, they were whining that they didn't have money, but in fact they had treasure here. The man who was being beaten spoke up, saying that he was just a boy and had nothing to do with them. The robbers standing near him began to kick him, saying that no one allowed him to open his mouth. Other residents looked at all this and shook with fear. Kang Jin thought that there are fewer robbers than the inhabitants themselves, so why don't they fight back? He asked to stop this outrage. The main one, laughing, immediately shouted to his big men to stop. One began to beat the poor resident even harder, as if in mockery, and asked what would happen if he did not stop. The young man appeared next to him in an instant, raising his hand to strike. He noticed this, got angry and swung himself, but missed as the boy dodged. Having dodged, Kang Jin gave him a great blow right to the collarbone, so much so that fingerprints remained. Turning around in the air, he kicked him in the stomach as hard as he could. From such a blow, the robber flew a couple of meters. Seeing this, the other two attacked him from behind. At the same time, the boy was surprised that the man flew further than he thought. Turning around, he paused for a second, noticing with annoyance that they were too slow. Easily dodging the first attacker, he trampled his face into the ground in an instant. And while he was dealing with the first one, the leader of that gang attacked him from behind. At that very second, he turned around and gave him a good kick in the jaw. Kang Jin stood on the ground with elegance while there was complete chaos on the ground around him. The villagers were completely shocked by what they saw. They asked him why he went with them if he knew how to fight so well. He calmly looked at them and asked them in response, maybe they would do something after all? Having recovered a little from the shock, they were horrified, asking why he did it. The young man sighed and asked if they would prefer to endure these beatings or what. Looking away, the headman said that of course not. They asked what they should do with them now. To which Kang Jin calmly replies that even after getting theirs, they behaved like animals, because it doesn't matter somehow. The headman tells him that if it were only these, they would try to protect the village, but they say that there are hundreds of them. The boy looked at them skeptically and asked, do they really believe in this? Is there at least one gang of robbers in which the number exceeds 100? There are not many people even across the state border. The head of the village says that even a few dozen people are a problem for them, and what to do in this case. The guy thought about it, but didn't think about the consequences, although the teacher always said to think about the consequences before doing something. Suddenly, a brilliant idea came to him to ask these same robbers about everything. Kang Jin says, let's just ask them, because if they come again and start shaking money out of them. He told them not to act like they didn't understand what he was talking about. The residents looked at him doubtfully but remained silent. The young man thought why they were staring at him like that again. Maybe they have a better option. And night came again and the moon was still high. And the tied-up robbers were sitting in the hut, and apparently one of them was trying to cut the rope with something. The main one had almost cut the last of the ropes on his hands with a knife. They swore at the guy, saying that as soon as they got out, he would be in trouble. One says that we need to kill them all. The second one tells him that he needs to leave a few people alive, then rumors will begin to spread, and according to their logic, then no one will resist them. A man in a red bandana asks how that boy did it, to which the main one answers him that they were too inattentive, and they should have just used the sword. The mustachioed man flew into a rage, saying that he just needed to dismember that youngster. Meanwhile, Kang Jin himself was watching them from behind bars. The robber shouts that he will cut him into pieces, but he is the size of a fist, and does not even think about being afraid of them. The young man, still watching them, smiled. After all, he was right. He must think about the consequences. The robbers all fell silent at once when someone slowly began to open the door. Opening the door completely, Kang Jin stood up and looked at them. Apparently having again tied the hands of the one who had already tried to cut the rope, he pushed them, kicking them in the back, into some kind of hole. Sitting already in the pit, they begged him for mercy. The guy, looking at their attempts, was only amused. He was very amused by this. He asked them that wasn't it great. The robbers huddled together and asked what he was talking about. Sitting down near the pit, the young man said with a smile that he was right when everyone else was wrong. But it turned out that he was right, and to avoid consequences in the future, he got rid of them now. Hearing the last sentence, they began to beg for mercy, saying that they would do anything. Without changing his position, he asked about their gang, how many people there were, and the like. They replied that there were about 200 people, agreeing that if they did not return, then huge problems awaited him. Having barely finished the last word, earth suddenly began to fall on them. The young man, having heard their lies, began to throw earth at them, saying that people who lie even in such a situation do not know how to value life. And if there really were so many of them, they would have been immediately caught and killed. Then the bald man, apparently fearing for his life, blurted out that there were actually only 62 of them. Having heard what he wanted, Kang Jin said that the one who told the truth deserves to live, and liars must die. Then the remaining two began to shout, vying with each other for knowing more of the truth. The guy, smiling, said that he would leave only one alive, the one who would tell the most about the gang. They immediately began shouting over each other, telling as much information as possible. Kang Jin tells them with a grin that, as he thought, they were simply wasting their abilities in vain. He told them that now there was certainly no point in leaving them alive. Then they began to be indignant, saying that he himself said that he would leave them alive if they told the whole truth. To which the guy answers them that he said that he would give them the key to salvation, but did not say that he would save their lives. Hearing this, they began to swear at him. One even said that after he killed him, he would become a ghost and find him. Having begun to cover them with earth, he mockingly asked how old they were, that they believed in such things. Even if it were possible, I don't think people like them would remain on Earth. He told them to just accept it. Even their sincerity would not convince him. Kang Jin said that he will not make the same mistake twice. There are already many people on Earth who create problems for others, so let them just die. When they were already buried up to their necks in the ground, the robbers began to scream, calling for help. When someone behind him asked what he was doing, the young man froze in place. It was his teacher and the one who was sent for him. They both looked at him with incomprehension. Realizing that it was Master Guan, he was delighted and said that he was having fun. Guan Nora once again asked what he was doing, coming closer to the pit. The robbers, buried up to their heads, screamed for help. Already breaking into a scream, he again asked his student what was happening here. He calmly replies that he is simply finishing what he started. Having heard a short retelling of what happened from Kang Jin, he shouted and asked if that was why he decided to bury them alive. The boy still calmly replies that he thinks rationally, because if he leaves them alive, and taking into account the possible consequences, they will return as a whole gang and kill everyone. Although they asked for mercy, saying that they would correct themselves and take the right path, but this is complete nonsense. Their soul was already saturated with darkness. It would be better to just quietly get rid of them. To which Teacher Guan said that if at least one person from the entire gang finds out about this, they will simply come as a whole gang and cause great harm to the villagers. Kang Jin simply says to this that he will smash them in one or two. Anyway, none of the local residents will tell anyone anything, the boy said, turning to the man. He immediately said that he would not tell anyone anything, but Guan Nora says that people will sooner or later find out about this. Therefore, the guy had to immediately inform him about everything. Kang Jin said that this is what he wanted to do at first, but even if he did, they would all demand money early. Could people cope with this? Mentor Guan asks why he does this to them. This time, the boy asked what his teacher would do in his place. Hearing this, the master fell into a stupor, not knowing what to say. The guy asked him why he still hadn't given a reason why this couldn't be done. He always said it before. You can't do that, that's all. Whatever the reason, the moment he harms people based on the words of his teacher, then everything he worked so hard for will turn to dust. Therefore, Guan Nora tells him to forget about the existence of this village forever. Hearing this, the boy was indignant. But Mentor Guan shouts for the young man to do as he says. Kang Jin froze and became silent because he had promised to do everything that the teacher told him. The old man tells him to go first. When the guy asked what about himself, he replied that he still had to restore order here. Guan Nora tells him to promise that he will not return to this village again. The boy grimaced and said that he promised. Having hugged the guy goodbye, he told him to go and try not to catch anyone's eye. The old man and the resident stood silently and watched as the young man went into the darkness. Sighing, Guan Nora picked up a shovel, greatly surprising the man standing next to him. Ignoring the poor man behind him, he continued Kang Jin's work, throwing up more and more earth, thereby burying the robbers. He cannot interfere in this no matter what the situation is. Alas, there is no other way out for Guan Nora. The butler of the Li family was documenting something, saying that apparently the matter was not completed yet. Suddenly there was a knock on his door, asking if he was there. Recognizing from the voice that it was Teacher Guan, he told him to come in. When the old man entered, the butler Chan approached him, asking if something had happened or if he was just looking for a drinking buddy again. Scratching his head, Guan Nora said that not this time, asking if the young master could talk to him when he had difficulties. He replied that of course, even considering that there had been no news from the young master for a long time, he could tell him everything over a cup of soju. Butler Chan, smiling, says that there is no one here except him with whom he can have a drink. Scratching his beard, Mentor Guan said that the situation was quite serious. He began to retell everything he knew about last night. He asks the manager if this can be solved somehow. Guan Nora has generally solved the problem, but not a single trace should remain. To which he replied that he had nothing to worry about, they were robbers, so everyone would only be glad to see them disappear. Shaking the butler's hand, he said that he would never forget his help. He got very old and stopped thinking about the consequences, so he did this. Butler Chan tells him not to worry. He will take care of everything. Sighing with relief, Guan Nora said goodbye and said that this would not happen again. The manager watched silently as Guan Nora left his office. It was already dawn. Not a sound was heard. Well, really, who would get up so early? But still, someone got up. It was Kang Jin, who, as always, trained early in the morning on the training field. Guan Nora approached him from behind, noticing him. The young man asked why he was here, because he usually does not get up so early. To which he replied that the boy was training hard, so he should watch the accuracy of his movements. Turning away, the guy asked why this was happening. Teacher Guan, holding a towel behind his back, asked if he was still offended. Kang Jin stood up straight, keeping a distance of a meter, and said that nothing was explained to him then. The problem is that there is no reason. If the old man had told him that he could kill them because there was a reason, then he would have created that reason. Guan Nora said that not everything is as simple as the boy thinks. Wiping the young man's face with a towel, he asked when was the last time he learned something from him, saying that it would be better if he stopped asking him and trying to understand the reason. To which Kang Jin tells him that the teacher always told him the reason before. The old man told him to trust him and wait. The guy obviously didn't like it. He said that he was very curious. Guan Nora answered him that everything has its time, and when that time comes, he will tell everything. Taking the already wet towel from his face, the guy says that he will wait. Smiling, Master Guan said that Kang Jin's core should already be bigger. For an average person, it is the size of a fist. He asked how he felt. Kang Jin showed with his fingers a small gap the size of a grain. At first, the old man did not understand anything. To which the boy said that it was the size of a pea, so it would be better if he showed it to him. The young man stood up, putting his hands forward. He filled them with energy. After a few seconds, a small wind ball formed from his hands. Old man Guan was surprised by this. Kang Jin meanwhile continued to talk. He understood how to handle the power, and to be honest, he vaguely felt it when he climbed the tree using the step technique. He again channeled the energy into his fist. Concentrating, he released it, creating a small wave of wind. Guan Nora was amazed by this, but Kang Jin happily said that a little more and there would be a real wave. He tried to do this long enough, and it seems to persist, then remain, and intensify, and finally decrease again. He definitely feels it, and he no longer has to worry about it. His strength is undoubtedly greater now. But the boy turned to the teacher, saying that sometimes he had pain near the back of his head, and at first he thought that he had injured his neck. Sometimes the pain even reaches the top of the head. This usually manifests itself before a person reaches a state of overflow with energy. But they said it was almost impossible. Guan Nora said that he didn't think it was anything serious, but it would be better if the boy stopped training for a while and rested. To which Kang Jin says that he is just training because he feels that something should break out of him. The teacher lied that he had the same thing. And what should he do about it now? He doesn't know anything about it. Meanwhile, the butler looked sternly at someone and asked if she had done everything carefully. A girl in a black robe and a hat that completely covered her face said that he had nothing to worry about anymore. He asked what she was doing before she started doing this kind of thing. She replied that her task was to appear only if something threatened someone's life. This was her first mission. She knew that the old man would come, so she just waited. Yes, in a sense she is also special. He told her to give them more accurate information next time. The girl bowed her head and said that she understood. Watching the girl in black leave, he thought that he needed to report everything to the owner. After the old man arrived, there was too much of everything. Butler Chan did not think that Guan Nora would so easily come to him for help. Well, in any case, it's immediately clear that a person has something to lose. The butler will be on guard until he knows everything about him. Kang Jin visited Tae-wan again. They were just having lunch, but the young man was apparently thinking about something. Tae-wan's sister said that she heard others saying that the bandits suddenly disappeared. The villagers said that the robbers realized that there was nothing to take here and left. The younger one said that he heard that heavenly punishment descended on them, and they were killed by lightning. Kang Jin heard this and looked at them with a frown. He asked them if everyone was really happy. The girl replied that yes, because they all got on their nerves. Seeing his classmate sigh, Taewon asked what was bothering him. He replied that it was nothing. He just suddenly became curious. He was wondering what kind of unknown hero showed mercy to the residents who were being harassed by robbers. Still, as they say, the law is far away, but the fist is nearby. This knight killed all the robbers. Is this a good deed? It had to be so. He caught the bad people and got rid of them. However, when has this ever happened in real life? So, most likely, the village people solved the problem themselves. Kang Jin continued to insist, saying that it would not matter if this hero existed and really killed the robbers. Would he be good or bad? Taewon didn't immediately have an answer, so he drawled out a meaningful "it." He says that this is a special case and everything depends on the situation. The law is just a minimum requirement for us. The moment circumstances interfere with the law, the foundation cracks. Such situations often arise, and if we continue to act incorrectly, we will have to change the law. Listening to his monologue, he could not stand it and said that he never answered his question. To which Taewon replies that a person who breaks the law is neither good nor bad. Kang Jin asked how to understand this. In response to this, his friend asked if he could catch the robbers alone. Would he kill them immediately? This question took the young man by surprise. Taewon continues, he doesn't know his motives, so he has no choice but to think whether this hero was really motivated by a sincere desire to help. Hearing this, Kang Jin looked away, biting his lip. It was already deep after midnight, and Guan Nora was sitting near the tree, and Kang Jin was leaning towards him. The teacher says that the boy is truly an unusual fellow. The young man only says that he is a principled and reserved guy. In response to this, the old man says that if he did not have principles, he would be like a weakling. If he had been a weakling, he would have achieved nothing. Since he has unshakable principles, he will successfully pass the state examination and will be able to become a worthy official. Having heard the analysis from the lips of the mentor, the boy thought about it. And yet, in words it is simple, but try to stick to them. Principles are promises to yourself. At the same time, the essence of the principles is simple. When you make a promise to another person, then both of you know about it. And if it comes to a principle, then only you know about it. And yet, following your principles is really not easy. Kang Jin asked if that incident with the bandits was also his principle. The teacher did not explain the reason then. The old man looked at the guy, wondering if he could tell him. He told him that if he wanted to do something, he should think it through. If you start looking for a reason, then in the end everything will collapse. Guan Nora reminded the young man that he initially wanted to be respected, so he should only think about this. Having talked, they sat looking at the sky where the stars were falling. Li Jiwan looked at the book he was holding in his hand in confusion. He finally found what he wanted. He saw a drawing in a book. It was a very clear pose, but this is a base that has not been trained for a long time. In this position, your legs should be stable and your upper body should be relaxed. It seems that Kang Jin is studying from these books. The head of the Li family was surprised how the old man managed to persuade his son to do this. It looks like you could die of boredom. But still, in truth, he is the man who brought about these changes. That's just how he did it. It would be good if he taught him useful things. As long as his strength is weak enough, everything will be fine. It is necessary that everything he teaches him does not reach even the lowest level. The image of the laughing Guan Nora again appeared before his eyes. But then how does he know other techniques? That's another question. Walking through the market, Guan Nora thought that he needed to slow down Kang Jin a little. He needs to buy the same useless book as then, so that he begins to have difficulties in studying. A man ran out of the house shouting that he had arrived. Guan Nora responded by asking if he had fulfilled his request, to which the man replied that yes, saying that a new person had come. He thanked Mentor Guan for waiting for him. Going inside, he sat down at a table and began to wait for him, listening to the narrator on the ledge. He thought about whether it would be better to take something from the Three Kingdoms next time, and it would be useful for Kang Jin to teach fighting techniques. It's a pity that he didn't tell more, although he told so little, but in detail. Guan Nora wanted to get the best out of him. It's good that he nevertheless prepared a program that can be taught for some time. Suddenly he was called out. Kang Jin ran up to him asking where he was going. The master replied that he was worried that he would need his help, so he came. Kang Jin immediately said that he was not going to study the war between the Chu and Han dynasties, or the Three Kingdoms. He was not going to become a military man. Guan Nora looked at him and asked what he was talking about. The boy says that he doesn't have to try too hard. It will be enough to just tell him about the ancient legends, to which the teacher told him not to be arrogant and to work on his gait. The young man began to show it, asking who even uses it. Although this looks like a mockery, this time everything seems to be true. To which Guan Nora replies that these are just the basics, and they say that when he reaches a high level he will be able to move through the air. He told the guy not to cling to words. He would definitely be able to do anything. While practicing his gait, he simultaneously talks to the teacher, asking who he thinks will be chosen to take the exam this time. He looks very curious. 5 children sat in front of the academician, and one of them were Tae-won and Kang-jin. And as they say, the good beginning has sucked away half the battle. They should not lose concentration and fight with themselves. Although he participates as an examiner, he will not treat them leniently just because they are his pupils. He told them not to be shy about expressing their opinions. They politely agreed with him. Kang-jin already imagined with horror how long all this would take. Before this, he and Tae-won discussed everything, testing each other's knowledge. They also discussed the textbooks that Mentor Gwan had given him. Tae-won asked why he was teaching all this if he already knew everything. To which Kang-jin replied that he would have a serious opponent. Wouldn't that help the guy? He replied that he was simply teaching. There was nothing special about it. Suddenly, Academician Chan came to them. His shock was visible to the naked eye. After this, he was chosen as a candidate for the examinations. He drove himself into the grave. The teacher called him by his full name. He responded, raising his head and looking at the academician. Meanwhile, the teacher himself said that he has high hopes for him. What he heard confused the young man. Because of this, he is now obliged to prepare for exams until the night. He didn't understand himself and why he was doing this. He had plenty of other things to do. Suddenly, there was a knock on his door and asked if he was sleeping. The guy replied no. His father came to him. Kang-jin clearly did not expect this. Sitting down at the table, he looked at the open textbooks, saying that he was studying hard. To which the boy said that the teacher told him to read it. The young man noticed that his father was smiling. Turning to his son, he said that recently his teacher told him that he was trying very hard, so he came to praise him. The guy just said that he should just study hard. Lee Ji-won says that this time he is happy to cover all the expenses of children who have achieved academic success. Kang-jin thanked his father. Meanwhile, he started talking about Tae-won. The young man said that he really learned a lot from him. He thought so. It was not easy to study diligently in such an environment. He had a good friend. Kang-jin said with a smile that they always study together. Lee Ji-won said that he doesn't want to burden him, but at the same time, he has high hopes for his son. He asked if he could count on him. The guy happily said that he would not disappoint him. This is something new. After that, the boy began to study even harder. He himself did not expect that he would be able to speak so openly with someone other than Tae-won and his family. But of course, this is not so important. The guy studied hard every day. He is so glad that his father is counting on him. He could still see the image of his father smiling at him. This is Lee Ji-won, and this seems to be happening for the first time. For the first time in his life, he hopes for him. He cannot let him down. It was already quite dark, but Kang-jin was warming up before something. He continued to repeat the movements from the book, his body overflowing with energy. Well, I think everything will soon fall into place. He combined study with training, is that good? The young man finished the exercises, standing straight. Is all this correct? He turned and told someone to go to bed first anyway. After he finished, he still needed to read the textbook. Gwan Nora, who was clearly already half asleep, woke up abruptly, saying that he would not go. He stood up, stretched, and said, since his student was going to combine literacy with martial arts, then he should be nearby. To which Kang-jin replies that he is no longer at that age, so he must follow the regime. The old man says he knows the boy is worried about him. Then the young man asked the teacher if he would be happy if he passed the exam. The mentor replied that this is what he is talking about. If the guy passes the exams, he will carry him on his back. Well, even if he passes at this stage, he still has a whole list of exams to pass, ranging from Hyangshi to Hueshi. If he gets this far, it's possible that he won't have as much time to study with Master Guan. He answered with a sigh that in martial arts it was enough for him to learn to defend himself in case of emergency, because his life will not depend on battles. Of course he must study. Kang-jin did not miss a moment to tease his mentor, telling him that he himself could not read. To which Gwan Nora answered him that this is precisely why he must surpass his teacher. After all, if you ask 100 people out of 100, then everyone will be on the side of science. The young man looked at him in bewilderment, asking if he also wanted to study. Straightening up, the old man said that of course he wanted to study. Putting on a confident face, the boy said that the teacher could rely on him. He would do everything. It was already dawn, but Kang-jin apparently hadn't even gone to bed yet. He was still sitting at his lessons. Although one might think that it is hard for him and that he does not know much, this is not at all true. Sighing, he told himself that he would write everything backwards. But nevertheless, he has a certain goal to which he adheres. The guy stroked the sleeping squirrel. Under no circumstances will he rest until he reaches her. The boy did not pay attention to anything. He simply stroked the squirrel. It's not as hard as it seems. Years passed unnoticed, and winter came. Everything was covered with snow. The cockerel and the squirrel were outside. The young man kept his eyes closed in concentration. He had already succeeded in everything, both in his studies and in martial arts. He was already able to fill his body completely with energy. Kang Jin still kept his eyes closed. Judging by the result, he had been training hard all this time. It was an ordinary spring day. Today the young man had to have an exam. Seeing the teacher, he asked why he left. Guan Nora looked intently at the student, asking how he was doing. Looking sternly at the mentor, he asked why he left. The old man did not answer this, but asked again if everything was all right with him. The young man says that he only recently recovered from his illness. He should rest now. To which the master told him not to perceive him as sick. Then the boy told the teacher to stay on the estate and not go to the neighboring village to have fun. He might get sick. The old man tried to convince him that there was nothing wrong with him, saying that he was still in the prime of his life. The young man only said displeasedly that he didn't even doubt it. Guan Nora said to climb on his back, saying that he could even carry him to the gate, to which Kang Jin says that he's no longer a small child. Hearing this, the mentor turns to the student with a smile. Grabbing him by the cheeks, he said that until he was 100 years old, he would consider him a child. He is his student, and of course he will remain his child forever. Still unhappy, he told him to do it within reason. While they were talking, Kang Jin's father approached them, asking if something had happened. The young man replied that everything was fine. Li Jiwon said that he did not expect his son to achieve such success, and he is proud of him. Kang Jin says that he will not disappoint his father. He replies that he is not going to make him an official. If he surrenders the Hyangshi, it will already be a huge step forward. The boy thought that it would be good if his father was always like this. Then Li Jiwon turned to his son's teacher, asking if he would be okay, because the road was not easy. The old man said that everything would be fine, and who would watch the boy. The head of the Li family showed his respect by saying that he would always be immensely grateful to him. Guan Nora also expressed respect, saying that he should be grateful, because he treated him so generously. He told his son's teacher to take care of the guy. The old man said that he had nothing to worry about. He would take good care of the young man, and he would pass the exam. The next moment they were already riding on a cart. In a conversation, the old man, apparently giving up, says that it's good. A guy asks his mentor if he has already been to Gwangju. He answers that he was, but more than 11 years ago. He was only in Xinhua to take care of the boy. Kang Jin says what the problem is, because for a teacher, traveling around the world is not far. To which he replies that he raised him without sparing his strength, and now the boy is hinting that he should go far away. Hearing this tirada, the young man calmly said that he would bear all the expenses. The guy closed the book with a bang, saying that it was stuffy there and his eyes were already hurting. Therefore, he walked out of the cart, which was traveling at high speed, and he ran along with the cart. Apparently, he really felt stuffy there, and he wanted to get some air. Guan Nora looked at him in bewilderment and asked why waste strength on this. To which Kang Jin replied with a calm face that he kept him at school for several days so that he could concentrate on his studies. And that's why his whole body felt like wood. He needed to warm up. The old man sighed and turned his attention to Taewon, saying that he was lucky. He says he's lucky to have such a good friend. The guy responds by saying that it was in Kang Jin from the teacher. Guan Nora agreed, asking if he believed in himself, saying that he had heard from his colleague that he was aiming for first place in the exam. Taewon responded to this by saying that he was wondering if he could pass this exam better than someone else. Meanwhile, Kang Jin, without hearing them, simultaneously read the textbook and ran, keeping up with the same pace as the cart. Finally, after 10 days, they finally got there. Taewon says he owes it to his father. To which Kang Jin said that he had already been to his house several times, asking if it bothered him to sit in rooms. The second guy only said that they needed to study. In response to this, the boy said, "If you read what you have already memorized, you will get confused. Rest is also important." Taewon just said that if he doesn't read it again, he'll definitely forget. You have to study hard, but he is stubborn as always. The guy asked the teacher if he would keep him company, to which the old man replies that he will rest while their things are checked. Apparently, my whole body hurts from the 10-day trip. The young man looked at him skeptically, saying that he just wanted to find alcohol. It would be better if the mentor went with him. To which he replied that if he wants to drink, he will go to a good place. Kang Jin said that this place was developed by his father, so he doubts that there is any alcohol here at all. Throwing a bag of money, he said that it would be better if they went together, and he bought him alcohol and a snack. Noticing the money, he softened, saying that the boy should be preparing for an exam. The young man said that he would just buy him a drink and get some fresh air. Having heard such a tempting offer, he thought a little and agreed. The market was as busy as always. They calmly walked through the market, the old man looking at everything with an enthusiastic gaze. The girls were already starting to look at the young man. Other girls looked out of the windows of the houses and waved their handkerchiefs at him, as if inviting him to come to them. Guan Nora looked around, saying that there were quite a lot of people here. But even from afar, it is clear that he is looking at the girls. Kang Jin smiled. He remembered that the teacher told him that he didn't like going out in public. but he seemed to like it here more than the guy himself. The old man said that we should go to a good place, because the boy was wearing good clothes. The young man agreed with him, saying that his father personally ordered these clothes for him. This was the first time he showed such care. A man began to perform a fire show by blowing on a stick, after which a ball of fire appears. A little girl walked among the audience with a small basket into which they threw money for the show. When he approached Kang Jin, he gave her a whole silver bar. Seeing this, she heartily thanked the young man. After watching the show, they walked further down the road, talking cheerfully. Suddenly, they heard someone shouting that they must repay the debt. Apparently, these were two local bandits. They pestered the couple, telling them to repay the debt. The man tearfully asked for forgiveness, saying that they would really bring the money next month.